Welcome to Cranky Live, the show where bold minds meet real talk. This isn't your average sports or news show. It's where we break down sports, culture, and controversy with facts, fire, and fearless honesty. Here, truth cuts through the noise, and hype gets exposed. From football to track and field, from world issues to local debates, we ask the tough questions, speak without fear, and go deeper than the headlines. We don't follow the crowd, we set the trend. While others recycle the same tired takes, we bring fresh insight, unfiltered analysis, and bold perspectives. No echo chambers, no puppet talk, just real conversation for people who think for themselves. Listen with your brain, not just your ears. Think critically, question boldly, and speak freely. This is Cranky Live, where reason rules the mic and truth always win. Come on, let's get into it. Good night. Can you hear me? I'm not hearing anything through my system, so let me know if you can hear me. This is not a good thing. I'm hearing myself speak, but I'm not hearing what's coming from the computer, which is weird because everything seems to be set up correctly. If you're in the chat, let me know if you can hear me. I don't know what's happening. I can hear myself speak, but I can't set the trend. So I hear my iPad playing. I cannot hear anything through the computer though, which is weird. If you're in YouTube land, let me know if you can hear me. This is not a good look. I find this really strange, but I'm hoping you can hear me, and I'm hoping it is recording, so that should not be an issue. Let me know if you can hear me out there though. Can you hear me? I think this may be a problem. Someone in the chat, just drop me a message if you can hear me, because I'm having some problems here. I don't know. I couldn't hear the music play, which I normally can, so just hit just say yes or no in the chat. If you're in the chat, just hit yes or no if you can hear me. I don't want to talk, and then can you hear me? I don't know what's happening. It says all my systems are a go. I think we got about 8 people in the chat. If you can hear me in the chat, just let me know if you can hit me before. So I don't want to start unless I know people can hear me. Unless you don't have you haven't subscribed, so you can't send me a message. But let me know if you can hear me before I start talking. It's coming across clear on my end, but I couldn't hear the music playing through the system, which I found very, very strange. So somebody in the chat, just hit me a yes now. There are 9 people there watching so far. Unless you can't hear me either. Or do I have to go get somebody to come in the chat and talk to me? Can't go. Oh, you can hear me? All right, good. I apologize, people, but when my intro was playing, I couldn't hear myself playing. And I found that really strange, actually, because normally I can hear us come through the TV. I call it TV, the monitor. Anyway, well, thanks for joining me. I started noticing that when we talk about football, the chat full up, and then we start talking about real life, the chat is very, very slow. Almost as if we just live football as our daily lives. But anyway, bless up your bears and Micah Roberts. Thanks for joining me. Tonight we're going to talk about what I call an interesting subject. It's not a rant tonight. When we talk about football, I tend to rant quite a bit because, it's a very emotive and emotional game. As a sport in general, I want to go to what I call a guided tour. So you're going to be on a journey with me. We're going through a tour. And this tour relates, you can see the thumbnail as to what the thumbnail entails. It's talking about the more recent policy by the football. Nitro said football is real life. Yeah, I didn't say it was real life, Nitro. I know it's real life. But there's other things apart from football out there that we focus on. But, the Trump administration came with a policy recently that has significant implications for a number of countries. And you see my thumbnail. But I want us to go on a journey and go through a process here tonight to talk about this. Because if you stare at the latest policy headline, you'll sort of miss the strategy. Now, I know a number of people have come out and talked about this, and it's kind of very obvious in terms of what it is. But the way the strategy is being implemented, it's really interesting. So let me just talk about some of my emotions up front. It's not about fear. This is more about concern. I'd say it's anger that's been forced to become somewhat analytical in terms of how I assess this. Because it's this is what you feel like when you watch the same group of people carry the same burdens through generation, through years, through centuries, over and over, even though the language sort of changed. And if you're hearing this and thinking, why would Cranky be so perturbed? He probably doesn't affect him. You should just stay with me. I'm going to make this case sort of step by step in my argument, which you see some of the in the description. And you can sort of judge as we go along, right? Sort of think through it. Now, what am I talking about? It's the current headline or current situation where the US State Department says that effective January 21st this year, it is pausing immigrant visa issuance. And that visa issuance that leads to permanent residence for nationals of 75 countries. And we'll touch upon those countries later. And citing a review connected to what they call public charge concerns and immigrant self-sufficiency. Zebev says the next one drop is birthright. We'll touch upon that. Importantly, this is not primarily a tourist visa issue or a tourist visa story. It's about permanent residence. It's about coming to this country and building a life. It's about living your circumstances where you're challenged and trying to improve the situation for you and your family. So what is an immigrant visa? Most people in the chat probably know this, but not everybody who watches this program may focus on this. It leads to what we call permanent residency, or affectionately known as a green card. And it's sort of, you can get that through a number of ways, sort of family-based. So you file for your mom, your dad, your brother, your siblings. And also you can file for other individuals, right? All depends. You can get it through employment-based, even though that's been changed drastically even before this law came out. It could be a diversity lottery. You could get it, go through a different process. So there's different ways of obtaining permanent residence. You can actually buy a permanent residence. If you pay $800,000 and as an investor, and you invest in certain targeted programs that the government has in place. So, example, in rural areas, or areas which are underpopulated, or if you spend $1 million, I think it's 50,000, and invest in non-targeted areas, you can get a green card for an investor. You're providing employment opportunities for people in the US. So you can buy it, or you can get it through different means. Or you can get a visa to come here to visit, like a tourist visa, short-term visit, no pathway to permanent residence. So what the new policy does is pause or severely slow immigration via the issuance of visas. Now, as I said, it's 75 countries that's under this, that's been identified or targeted currently. There were a number of countries before who had restrictions, probably about 40 or so, but this expands this significantly. It doesn't primarily target tourists. I think part of the tourist component maybe have to do with the World Cup. That may sound a little bit cynical on my part, but I think they want this World Cup to be a success, so they probably don't affect the visit component for now. Because if you go on the White House website, you will see some of the restrictions they had on some countries before. They have listed over a number of countries previously. And what they show you is the percentage of persons who may have visited the United States on some temporary or visitor's visa, and the percentage of those people who remain in the US and then return back to their country. So that's also part of the whole equation. So what this new policy basically said, you can come, but you can't stay. We don't want you here. You got to go back to where you come from. Or don't come at all, which is what the 75 country listed on it says don't come at all. So I'm going to walk through what I consider to be sort of a 5-step timeline so we can understand how we got here, because it's a strategy being employed. It's a big picture strategy, but it's being rolled out in phases. And unless you really are following this from the inception of the process, which is when the current president took office in 2016, and now this is probably his last term, he's just going to go all out and do what he wants to do, then he may miss some of this. So the first thing is I have to close the doors that allow people to come into the US. And also, this is part of closing that door. So gotta close the door for the illegal entrance at first. Close the pipeline. Border entry tightening. The border numbers, and I think in Obama era, Obama probably deported more people than any other president, even more than Trump in his first term. But I think this time around, even before Biden left office, the numbers on the borders were down significantly. So a lot of people came in, especially from places like Venezuela, given the economic situation there. And by the way, when I think about some of these things like Venezuela, you have to understand something. Some of the problems that some of these countries face, whether it's Cuba or Venezuela or some of these countries, which is Cuba and Venezuela were more about sanctions. Other countries like Latin America or maybe in the Caribbean are more about crime and guns. The US directly or indirectly contributed to the financial challenges and safety issues in those countries. So one, as it relates to Venezuela and Cuba, is sanctions, because as some of you may know, most transactions globally are done in US dollars. That's why the US can sanction these. They use the SWIFT system. So they can preclude you from conducting business and conducting trade in terms of import and export. And secondly, we know most of the guns in this South America, Caribbean, comes from the US, which is where people are trying to escape from, because safety affects the economy, safety affects personal health, our personal well-being, and that also causes stress and challenges and issues for a country. So the US has a lot to do with how the region operates and the safety of the region and the economic ecosystem for the region. So if you close the illegal entry border, which has been done significantly, the numbers, they have precipitous drops in the numbers of people who come to the border illegally as compared to previously. I think there they had built up a whole ecosystem in terms of logistics there. And now that has been reduced significantly because people are not coming through like they used to. It's much tougher to go across the border. Then we talk about, talk about that, the entry component, the interior enforcement pressure, which we're seeing, that relates to ICE, the citizenship challenges, someone mentioned in there, the birthright citizenship, the selectiveness of countries, and because we had some countries being identified before, like the Somalis of the world, and restricted, and then the more 75 just came out recently. And then there's one more component to this whole equation. So follow me here. I mentioned 5 things. Follow me here. The last one of this, in this, the 6th component is what I call the legitimacy war, which is the DEI backlash and what is signaled sort of socially and politically. So we can go through all of that. So if you're just joining tonight's show, it's a guided tour of how the policy stacks up over time. Please hit the like button if you have done so, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. So how did we get here? The first thing was to close the pipeline. This is where border lives, deterrence, restrictions. We are being invaded by criminals and rapists that Mexico sending over, or Venezuela sending these people, or in insane asylum with the drugs to rile up the country. That was done. And it was very effective. Or you see Texas and other states bordering Mexico and some of these countries busing people to the blue states, because they're saying the blue states are part of the problem because they're overburdened where they're located. So now here's the point. Even if you shut down the entry point of people coming to the US, you still have people inside the country who may not be legal. So step one of closing the borders, that's how people come in, is never the culmination of the process. It's not the whole project. It's one aspect of it. As I'm going through this sixth component that informs this, you sort of think through it. It's a strategy. Right? And when we talked about go through this, I'll culminate it by or conclude it by telling you holistically what that entails. So one is closing those borders, which they've done a brilliant job of doing so far, make it very draconian to try to come in. Two is pressuring the interior. What does that mean? ICE, which has been given billions and billions of dollars with limited training of how to handle difficult situations that we saw in Minnesota. They're the enforcement mechanism run by someone who's not qualified for the group, to run the group. They have broad impact beyond criminality. So the message that was sent to people initially was, as it relates to ICE, was that, or what the government was going to be doing, is pursuing those individuals who are criminals, rapists, whatever those are, who are doing illegal stuff and get them out of the country. That was it. Almost out of silence as to those who may be doing a good job and working as to how they would be treated. But that's not how it's worked out. Because what people don't realize is that even though Trump is the head of all of this, Stephen Miller, who's in the background, or who's come out in certain public domain, is the architect of all of this. If you don't know who Stephen Miller is, go look him up. He's part of the White House staff. I did an article on my channel, ssnnlive.com, when we talked about the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, and black farmers and what Steve Miller did there. And he's known as the epitome of a racist, what I call it. As racist as they get is Steve Miller. It's not even debatable. And he's the one pushing ICE to arrest 1,000 people a day. Has been doing that for a while. And he has a lot of influence, and a lot of support from individuals who are Republicans who back some of these policies. So in terms of ICE, this is where sort of lifestyle changes, arrests, detention, removals, fear, that spread throughout families and communities. And we've seen a lot of the ICE stories. We've seen the situation in Minnesota. I think someone just got shot the other day again. I think they have over 70,000 people now that's in ICE facilities being arrested. And they're deporting hundreds of thousands of people. And they have identified locations like the Home Depots, black and brown neighborhoods that they go and just pick people up, stopping people randomly, asking if they're citizens or trying to show them papers. And a lot of those individuals are not trained to perform in that role. So different sources may frame enforcement differently. But even mainstream policy groups know that immigration enforcement has become, is the administration agenda with a lot of large-scale operations intending on just identifying individuals. People, I'm not taking any call until I finish. Sorry about that. I'll take the call when I'm done going through this. And when enforcement pressure rises, people avoid institutions. A lot of people don't even go to work now, right? They avoid systems. They avoid going out. They try to become invisible. It's very difficult when you live from paycheck to paycheck. And whether that's called law enforcement or social control, depends on who you are and what you have lived through. And I can't imagine what some of these people go through, right? Because I go to Home Depot, I go to Lowe's, and I see people out there looking for day work. And in a lot of instances, the reason why that's the case, because they don't have their papers to get the type of jobs that they would like to get. And those individuals are just trying to make a living for themselves and their family. A lot of them, they don't even spend half their paycheck. They're sending money back home to their families. Now, so that's two. So we're thinking about ICE, what ICE has done. And ICE is any and everywhere. Very dictatorial how they operate. And by the way, they are granted immunity from prosecution if they do anything wrong. So the person who named Ross, who shot the lady in Minnesota, he's not going to be prosecuted. It's amazing where we are as a country, actually. And historically, I'm going to digress on this a little bit. Historically, the U.S. has been a country who do these things, but do them in a more covert way, not overt. Good night, Tuffy Rudy. And good night, Owen. But now they're doing it much more overt. Because this president, he must have some Jamaican in him. He has to show how tough he is. I hate to say that, people, but he has to show that he's the man. He's big, brother, beat his chest. So we talked about two things. One is the entry point, the border, closing that down. Second is now going out in the communities and identify those who are here illegal and arresting them, sometime without due process, locking them up and trying to deport them and send them to country where they don't even have any affiliation, any family, any engagement, and country decide to take it because the U.S. pressure them. So that's two. We're going through all these 6 items. Number 3 is around what I call a challenge to one's lineage. So if you read the Constitution, I read excerpts of it, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are citizens of the USA and of the state that they reside in. So if you're born in New York State, then you're a citizen of the USA and New York State. Obviously, you can change your residence and go to another state. That's in the law. But it's also been a battleground in the US. It's not the first time it's been challenged. And courts have always blocked it to end efforts to repeal it or change it. And it's also going again to the Supreme Court because it's been brought up again. And all 3 branches of government have long interpreted the language to signal a broad grant of citizenship. And there was a Supreme Court case in the 1890s, where it was challenged. And the court ruled in favor of the fact that it should remain. So there's only a few instances where someone born here, so if you're born to an ambassador, for example, of a country, you'll not be considered a U.S. citizen in this country, right? Those are much more the diplomatic route. If you're born here normally, naturally, even if your parents are not citizens, you get birthright citizenship. And that's one of the avenues they're going up, saying the process was illegal from the start, so why would you allow it to do this? And Tuffy Rudy says, the reason it's been done openly now is because the leader of the country endorses something that was there all along, but not openly endorsed by the leader. Yeah, so that's why I talk about Tuffy, which is the more covert way of operating versus the more overt way of operating. The US has always done bad things. They just do it on the cover versus doing it plain sight. Now it's been done in plain sight. So whether you agree with the policy or not, this is significant. You can redefine who gets citizenship by birth. You're not just changing immigration, right? You're changing what it means to belong. So you're being told, if you want to change birthright citizenship, that you don't belong here, you belong someplace else. And that's very disturbing because let's think about it this way. Not only will it apply to individuals who may be born here of someone who is legal and their status, so where you want them to go to, the country that they weren't born in, but it could also be where, suppose you came into the country, you get your citizenship illegally, or permanent residence illegally, then that may apply to generations down the line. And that's really interesting. So ask yourself so far, for the 3 things we talked about, the entry point, ICE, and the citizenship issue, if you think about them, do they make sense individually or collectively? So remember, we're on this tour. No, we're not tour. We're going through 3 already. We're going through 6. We start with the front door entry. You come into the country. Then the interior pressure where ICE, enforcement, trying to figure out a way to get rid of all the people who are here who may not have permanent residence legally. And then we're going to fight the citizenship. So it's a very strategic way of approaching this, and a very phased way and a very staged way of approaching this. Now, the 4th step is what we call the the selective country element that are selected by nationality. Right? So just think about it. The 75 country visa issue, whereby now there are 75 countries more recently identified. So as of January 26th, 21st, I should say, as I mentioned at the outset. And this is not a travel ban for tourists. It's an immigration pipeline issue. And this is significant. So people who are pursuing lawful permanent residence in the US through the normal consular process are stuck. Imagine these people, because I don't think people here in the US and in other countries, people are trying to migrate to have empathy or sympathy that they should. So your parents file for you, you're in the process, you know you're close, and then say, yes, or somebody, your significant other file for you, sell your house, sell your car, you know you got foreign, you know you're going someplace else, and the process is shut. And you have no idea if you'll ever be hoping again. So if we go through this, the suspension affects family-based and employment-based immigration visas. But it doesn't impact non-immigrant visas like tourist or student visas. And for me, the tourist thing is probably ties into the World Cup. We'll see what happens after the World Cup is done. But also, I don't think people realize that all of these decisions have implications and affect other parts of the country, which may not be obvious to some. So we take a step back and say this. There are a lot of persons who come here illegally, who are in the system, who are working, who are doing jobs that America doesn't want to do. So we'll see when this flush out over 2 years, what all this means. Whether you came in through the front door or whatever door you came through and you're here and you're working, you contribute to society, a society where the majority population is not growing and where you're working below the sort of standard wage for the job you're doing, and then you're being excluded from the society and taken out of the system. That should be interesting. Right? Very interesting. So as I said, the suspension affects it's family-based, it's employment-based. It affects countries including, as we'd expect, Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, Somalia, Brazil, Egypt. And for those of you who are from the Caribbean, it affects, I think, almost all the Caribbean countries, except for, interestingly, 2 countries, Guyana and Trinidad. Now, if you read a lot of different sources, but before I jump into that, let me come back to the Guyana and Trinidad to say a couple of things. So the permanent component, permanent residence, family reunification and employment are key part of this, and especially the family component. I mean, you have your kids in Jamaica and you file for them and you can't bring them up. So that separation is there. It's almost like they want to force you to go back to Jamaica. You don't have no idea if you're going to get your kids through, or your parents for that matter. Right? It's really interesting. And the US reason and the rationale for this, which is really interesting, and they use the Minnesota fraud situation, because there's a lot of information in the press and in the news about the fraud being committed by Somalians in Minnesota as it relates to benefits and benefits being given to persons who are illegally here or just fraud in the system in period. They're saying they want to ensure new immigrants won't rely on US public benefits, right? And they're linking what's transpired, sort of fraud that they've seen, to justify the decision. And we can hear these excuses a lot of times whereby I want to do something, but it may have negative implications. It may not resonate well. So what I do is I use some rationale, which may sound logical. We can pass the sniff test, but if you sniff hard enough, it smells. And as such, we know that that's not the primary reason. It's part of a larger strategy. That's not the reason. So the reason is that, well, if you come to the US, we want to make sure that you're not coming to come in the country where you can be self-sufficient. You're not going to leverage the system for your support. And as I said, there's a bunch of countries. Most of the countries on the list, and we'll go to that list, most of the countries are black and brown countries. Now, there's some carve out, right? The pause does not affect those who are already lawful permanent resident. If you're a U.S. citizen already, and you're being filed for, so you're already a U.S. citizen. So there's the immigrants from affected countries who seek visas through connections to their spouses, parents, or minor children. Okay, U.S. citizen are generally exempt from the ban. Now, I find that a little bit surprising. They didn't say U.S. born citizens, which is normally how they manage this. So they probably missed something there. They say U.S. citizens. What that sort of suggests, if you came here from another country, you were naturalized, become a citizen afterwards, and you file, then it should be okay. So if you were to expand that, it would say it's for naturalized persons who are not citizens, or it should be people who have green cards who are not citizens. There's filing who would not be able to bring forward their siblings. It's really an interesting thing, and I'm not sure there's a miss on their part. But it is concerning, actually, that the 75 list, and I should pull that list up. I know I have that list someplace. The 75 list. So this is an article that I picked up that talks to this. I was trying to go on the White House site to see if they have a video on it, but they don't. But if you go through this, if you go here, I got the bottom here. These are all the countries. Can you guys see that? And as I was saying before, two of the Caribbean countries which I expected on the list, but are not on the list, I'm not sure if I expected them, but they're not on the list, are Trinidad and Guyana, which is really interesting. Now, I can understand Guyana. I'm not sure I understand Trinidad. Now, the view of people is that, well, it's about oil, and therefore, that is why both of those countries are not here. It's true that those two countries have oil, but they're in different places. Trinidad's situation has changed materially. I think Trinidad is based on the fact that the Trinidad president has supported the U.S. president in some of the things that he's done in the situation in Venezuela and in the Caribbean, and blowing up people who supposedly said they are coming on drug boats. And she's been a staunch advocate, vocal advocate. I don't think it's necessarily oil for Trinidad because that industry is challenged. For Guyana, it's all about oil. And the reason why Guyana worked for the U.S. is I wrote an article, two articles about the Guyana situation. They're on my SSNN Live website. I did them a while ago. And if you go read it, it'll give you some insight into the Guyana situation as it relates to Guyana's deal with Exxon, how Exxon sort of raked them over the coal in terms of what they get out of it, the amount of cost that Exxon attributes to the cost to get the oil out the ground, how much money they make from this, and the pittance, frankly, the few billions that Guyana get for oil in which Exxon is making a ton and they're making little or nothing. So if Trump is a businessman, that sounds good to him. Let's exclude Guyana. Guyana's not on the list. It's really interesting. And will not be on the list, I don't think, given the amount of oil that they have and the fact that they have Exxon there, and nobody wants you to naturalize oil when a U.S. company has spent so much money in exploration and getting the oil out the ground and selling the oil on a global basis. And by the way, the U.S. more recently said that they're now able to sell Venezuelan oil for a much higher price than it was before, as if they did such a wonderful thing and is their negotiating power. They were the ones blocking them in the first place. The hypocrisy and contradiction shouldn't escape anyone, right? So we have talked about four things now. And I think that's really interesting in terms of the 75 countries, who they are. And I'll touch upon later on this discussion, which is, what are those countries going to do? Because the rationale that we're getting for this new policy, which is really something that's hitting people hard, is that immigrants must be financially self-sufficient and not become a public charge, right? Now I'm going to be fair. Every country has a right to vet applicants. Every country has a right to protect public resources and make sure it goes to its individuals who are permanently there are its citizens. But this isn't about whether the vetting exists. This is about whether the strategy that they've employed, that I've walked you through, marries with that suggestion. And frankly, it doesn't. Public charge, as they call it, already exists as a legal concept. And the level of enforcement changes by the different administration that runs the US government. It's not something brand new. It's not a new lever. It's always been there. And you hear people in Congress tell you that illegal immigrants are not allowed or precluded from getting these benefits. And fraud and benefit misuse are not racial traits. They occur across any population group. And the majority may want to send this misconception. The government want to say, well, fraud is being perpetrated in certain communities, and that's why it is. One of the persons mainly involved in the fraud in Minnesota is a Caucasian. It's not a Somalian. If the true driver of this was welfare risk, then the question that applies is, well, when you're doing your vetting, don't you vet the financial resources then of the parties involved who are trying to come into the country? What we're creating in the situation is we're preventing certain people of certain persuasion from becoming permanent resident in the US. Because this is about power and this is about politics. Now, I don't want to claim, I don't want to use the word that, you know what? This is a one situation whereby it's only one focus. But when all the evidence point to one thing, it's hard not to do that. It's hard. Because it does feel very unreasonable. It does feel very draconian. It does feel as if a people, especially people who are Black, who have gone through so much trauma as a people, where they sometimes don't elect themselves, trauma is still being perpetrated upon them. But we will be excused, or we will be excluded or exempted from some of these things if we have something that we can give as a country that is valued by what I'm going to call the oppressor. Now let's touch upon DEI, because this is important. The initial process of all of this, whether it's the entry point, whether it's the internal enforcement, whether it's the number of countries where it's birthright citizenship, or the number of countries who are restricted from their personnel come to this country, the start of all of this was DEI. The first thing the administration did in their second term was to have the whole Dodge concept. So they reduced funding to a lot of different countries who need that funding for, some of them for the Survive our non-for-profit organization. They cut that funding. And then they cut the government a lot, because on a pro rata basis, there are more Black and brown people in the government than there are the majority. So they cut that significantly. This is all targeted. And then they went to the universities and pressured them to not have DEI type policies. And then they went to the corporation, did the same thing. So they've had a strategy that they've employed where they did it by staging to go after different segments of the society or different areas with one theme, one thing in mind. And the whole DEI construct, if you look at the administration and its composition, most of those people are not qualified for the role that they do. That's the epitome of DEI. Someone says, South Africa is not it because they took white refugees in. No, South Africa is none of this because Musk is a South African. This president is a very interesting president. You know, he operates. If he likes you, I think Trinidad's done it because Trinidad supports him too. I don't think Trinidad is about oil. But for South Africa, you know, they bring white South Africans here because they say they've been persecuted, a race that's persecuted Black people until Nelson Mandela became president way back when, who had an apartheid regime, who had 87% of the land in South Africa way back when and gave the blacks 13%, even though they were less than 15% of the population. It's amazing how that works. But our US didn't support South Africa, or blacks then. But all of a sudden we got conscience and we are upset when things are flipped and blacks are now the majority and blacks are now running the government. So the whole DEI that has been pushed in the media, and even some black people are saying, oh yeah, DEI is bad, and they have no idea what DEI means or how DEI works. When I was in corporate, DEI wasn't about hiring a bunch of black people or brown people. It was about making sure they're part of the process, making sure when you're going to interview for a job, there's a diverse slate of candidates and not just all Caucasians. And I heard the discussion in corporate, especially from some white men who were brave enough to talk about it, saying they're the ones being excluded. Now, these are people who have always been the persons who got all the best jobs, were always included. And now the slate has broadened and others have an opportunity to pursue certain roles. It wasn't well received. And frankly, for DEI, Caucasian women benefited than anybody else from DEI. This wasn't a black or brown issue. It was a societal issue. Now, what's also interesting about this whole process, which people are missing, Western Europe, which is very obvious, most of Western Europe, all of Western Europe is not here. There's a few countries like Albania on the list. Western Europe is not here. And Western Europe have people come here and stay and stay illegal. But here's what's also interesting. Look at the list. How many Asian countries do you see there? Tell me how many Asian countries you see there. Do you see any South Korea? Do you see any Japan? Do you see any Hong Kong? Do you see any... Where are those countries? Maybe I can't read well. Do you see any Vietnam? I mean, Thailand is there, but there's very limited number of Asian countries that are there. So one could say, well, they're saying it's an economic decision, and therefore those countries can support the people who are migrated here. But that's not the case. Because a lot of people who move from those countries come here, do so because of their financial situation. So that's interesting. But here's what's interesting that people should focus on. I've said this before numerous times. When you cannot be dependent on another country for your own situation and your own survival. You have to be, if you're an independent sovereign nation, you have to operate accordingly. So I'm going to come back to the Caribbean. And in general, I'm going to say this. When a global power, the most powerful country on earth, where that position is eroding, closes its doors, other doors will open, must open. It's not a one country world. That's what I mean by that. The US has been clear. It doesn't want China to expand its influence in this part of the world, or in Africa, or in Latin America, any part of this part of the world hemisphere, or in Africa, for example. It's been clear about that. And yet its policies is now limiting mobility, opportunity, and the permanence for those people from those same regions to access the US. That contradiction is interesting. And the question is, how will those countries respond? Now, I've said this before. Jamaica, let's talk about Jamaica a little bit. Jamaica's biggest problem is it lacks valuable industries. If the US sneeze, Jamaica catch pneumonia. If the US sneeze, Jamaica catches pneumonia. And that's interesting. And why do I say that? When you look at Jamaica's GDP and its composition, tourism and remittances are its key contributors. I think tourism is over 30% and remittances are close to 20, depends on what year you're looking at. So almost half Jamaica's GDP come from just two sources. And in the early years, Jamaica's GDP, you think about bauxite or sugar or rum, agriculture, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s was in a good place. And you had the oil crisis in the 70s, and he had the social programs by Manley and up in the 80s, destroyed Jamaica in a lot of respects and destroyed its dollar. I'm going to do a show also on the decline of the Jamaican dollar at some point and the rationale and what allowed the decline to materialize. But let's go back to this. So if the US decide that, you know what, I don't want to deal with these countries and the people from these countries, then those countries have to respond. You cannot tell countries don't align with China while you're telling their citizens you're not welcome here on a permanent basis. And here's the difference between the US and China. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for China because all these countries have their challenges and their issues. China is not democracy. Been to China, nice place, big roads. But I went to Tiananmen Square because a reminder for me how democracy is fleeting and how dictatorship can be cruel. But China doesn't lecture. China shows up with ports, roads, financing, infrastructure. Sends its own people, by the way, so it gives itself full employment, and it gives you money, which you have to pay back. But at least it's leaving something tangible in your country. And yeah, you may be more indebted, you have to pay, but it's helping you improve as a society. When the US come in, they take, and they'll leave you destitute. And you should be happy about it. Not only do they take your natural resources, the biggest thing for the Caribbean, which is really interesting actually, and it's a real contradiction, they're taking your human capital. You have significant brain drain. The best and brightest that you educate, you nurture, you grow, you evolve, you develop, when they get to a certain stage and they realize that they can make much more overseas in other countries, in the US, Canada, than they make where they are, they're going to migrate. Now, there are others who migrate who may not have certain skill sets, but they migrate. And then what happens is when you lose out intellectual capital, you lose entrepreneurship, you lose innovation, you lose growth, you lose so much. And so you have a conundrum. Because that group that immigrates provide remittances, which is a big part of your GDP. But also it drains you as a country. Just think about it this way. I'm going to use a sports analogy. Just imagine that, and we have that now in sports anyway, like the Brazils of the world, but you develop all these football players, excellent players, and as soon as they finish the academy, they go overseas and go play for some other country. And then play for your country. You don't benefit from it. They may send back money, right? But they're not there helping you. And also, what is interesting about that is those countries have not come up with a strategy about how they can leverage that intellectual capital to help them evolve as countries, to help them be innovative. It's something that requires a lot of thought and action. They just want the remittances to come back and the dollars to flowing and invest. But even those dollars flowing and investing in those countries are a problem because it prices out the local persons. So in Jamaica, for example, there are so many homes being built, luxury home being built, and local people there don't make the money to buy them. And they bought, they sit there, nobody's in them. They come there once or twice a year. They may use them as Airbnb. That local population not necessarily benefit. There is no strategy being employed to say, let's think about how we can leverage that capital to help us, which is intellect, not necessarily money, evolve as a society. So it's really interesting. And if you look at what's happening, I think a lot of these countries, some of which have done so already, are going to move more and more to China. So I think the US is creating a sense of sort of self-destruct. Because here's what's interesting. The industrialized world, unlike developing countries, the population not growing. You look at Japan, even China, which is a one-person policy for a while, 70s, 80s, 90s, is now trying to even force their citizens to have kids. Russia is giving all these benefits to people to have kids. Look at Spain. I was reading the Spain football strategic document the other day and look at the population growth part. it was a big number in terms of deficit. Italy struggling, the US Caucasian population struggling. So most industrialized countries nowadays, the citizens of South Korea is another big one. You look them up, it's really amazing. But most of these countries nowadays, the interesting thing is that they're struggling for population growth. Now, the way your retirement construct work is that it's the productive persons who supply the retirement benefits for those individuals. It's like a revolving door. And if you don't have the population to do that, you're going to have major crises down the road. So the US, which is an immigrant country per se, because apart from the original Indians who are here, most people migrate here or come here, and it's a country that affords you a lot of opportunities. If they're trying to restrict the number of black and brown people who are here, obviously not restricting someplace in Asia, and the Caucasian population is not growing, can you imagine 15, 20 years down the road what it looks like? Now, the prognostication is by 2050, the US will be a majority, will not be Caucasian majority. And that's what this is all about. All the things I talked about before all culminates with this, which is there is a view, and you hear Musk and others talk about this, which is US population is not growing, black and brown are not growing. What will happen when that group becomes the majority, vote accordingly, and may want to be reactive to what transpired before about how they were treated? Well, I would say a couple of things. One is the minority or the brown and black people are not uniform anyway. They're not one aligned group. They're not coordinated. They sit on different sides of the aisle. So that probably will never happen. Right? Never happen. And what I would like to see is that the Caribbean as a region, look at Europe, has one, apart from England, who try to be cute and now are struggling, they have one economy per se. They have one currency. The borders they can go across borders. Why wouldn't that be in the Caribbean? Why do you have one economic zone in the Caribbean where we talk about CARICOM, which is a non-functional organization? Why don't we have that where you function as one region, one people to compete with the rest of the world? Why wouldn't Africa do the same thing? The differences, which are based on history, are manufactured by some in the Caucasian community as it relates to these countries. It's part of their challenge and they haven't worked through it. Now in Jamaica, unless Jamaica wake up and stop relying upon tourism and remittances for it to progress as a country, it doesn't look good going forward. It doesn't look good. China in the 70s was a backward country. China today is a dominant country because they realize that population is important. Population, and innovation, thought. These are imperatives for a successful country and a successful economy. And what China did was realize they have a big market. They used that sword, that being big market, to force people to give them their intellectual capital, which is whether it's software or whatever it is otherwise, became a manufacturing behemoth for the world, and now they're dominant. And what happens is might make right in this world. So the US is the biggest nation, the strongest nation, and they're using their might now explicitly, overtly. Everyone can see it and they don't care. Very, very obvious. They're not subtle anymore about what they do. It's not the CIA doing just covert operation. They do it now still, but they're very transparent about what they're trying to do. Except when they're coy saying, oh, we're trying to reduce people coming into 75 countries because of them trying to take advantage of the welfare system. No, they're trying to reduce the population. And if they can get rid of birthright citizenship, if they can reduce permanent residence, then they won't have the people here who are having the kids who are going to increase that population. So they slow down population growth for black and brown people. They'll maintain theirs because theirs is not growing. They can't convince their people to grow it. And they try to maintain the status quo. US wants influence without integration. Compliance without there's any belonging. And alignment without access, which is really interesting. But that's not how the world works anymore. It doesn't. The world has changed. You can't control this hemisphere of the US by exclusion. You can't. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Hello.
Yeah, well, go on.
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Who am I speaking to?
Jerk.
You said jerk? Hello?
Yes, phone. You hear me better now?
I'm hearing a little bit better. Yeah, I'm hearing you better now. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was listening to your show, man, and you make a point where me decide someone have to call you, Frankie.
All right. What's the point?
Frankie,
Yeah.
you're saying that brown and black people now produce enough kids and
No, that's not what I'm saying. No, you're reading the wrong way. It's the other way around.
okay.
It's the other way around.
Okay. Well,
Caucasians not producing enough kids. That's their concern.
okay.
No, it's not brown and black people. Brown and black people produce kids, especially brown people. Brown people produce kids.
My apology then.
Yeah.
Right me a year on this.
No, man. No, it's the Caucasians. If you look at it, it's not only Caucasians, it's certain Asian population too. So Japan, South Korea, even China, Russia, Italy, Spain, UK, US, all those countries, they're not having kids. They're not having kids. You need to have about 2.1 kid to maintain your population, much as to increase the population. Anybody have more than 2 kids?
Well, in America, I know.
Yeah.
You know what slowed down the growth in America?
What?
When they legalize the same-sex marriage and them thing there. And then thing they slow it down.
No, man, come on, man. No.
What are you talking about?
No. Same-sex couples do have kids. They get kids. They get you surrogate to get kids. No,
All them get kids.
They have surrogates, so people have the kids for them.
Yeah, so somebody have kids to them. So why if them didn't have kids and the person who go have kids did have kids, how much kid that's?
Yeah, but the person who have the kid is not their kid. They get a fee to have the kid and they move on. They have their own kids.
Yeah, that cause too much problem in go cause too much problem, man.
No, but I don't think that's the reason. You know, if we think about it, which is in the Western world, people want to have lives. I'm gonna give you an example. It's very interesting. When I work in corporate, most of the Caucasian people I deal with, they would have about 2 kids, right? Some may have 3. The way they engage, and they have resources, right? So those kids will be playing baseball or playing soccer or playing those sports. But the way it worked was that they didn't have weekends. So they would play for traveling teams or local teams. One kid would play soccer, one play baseball. Every weekend, the mom goes one way, the dad goes one way. The mom and dad don't have lives. Now, so that's one element. For the ones who don't have resources, if I don't have resources, I don't want to have a kid and I can't give the kid all the privileges that I want to give them. So affordability or just time, whether it's work or I don't have time, even when I have time, when I can create time for myself, doesn't allow me to want to have kids. At least the number of kids that be required to grow the population. So the more resources you have, the more challenge it becomes. And the people who are very rich, they're not dealing with their kids. They are doing what they do and they have nanny take care of the kids.
But Frankie, you know, when me see people when me see pregnant mother, I wonder sometimes if me depend on pregnant mother what to rock with the You know, when me see woman pregnant, you see when you catch 21, so it starts slow down last year. It starts slow down.
Yeah.
Virgin, the woman them when I see them come and me I tell her say, some big woman they come like them to find a man and say, breathe me. Virgin, a millions of kids born between 2021, you know.
You mean because of COVID? Because people are locked up?
No, and COVID.
What was it?
And COVID. The immigrant them come across the border.
Yeah. Oh, you mean trying to have citizens? Okay.
Yeah. Because I tell us, me see one woman in my neighborhood, a woman, they have one little baby. And believe me now, I exaggerate, have 5 the woman I know, you know. 5 in a bedroom.
Yeah.
Every year the woman have a picnic to write it.
But how does someone support 5 kids unless you have quite a bit of resources?
Because they might get the food stamp, they might get all of them something there.
Yeah.
So that's why they might have them.
Okay. No, I will say in New York, I'm not going to say it's lucrative, but the state is very generous in supporting individuals who have kids. Very generous. Very generous.
So, Jim, the woman them have kids like me, no know me. I wonder if some of them are gonna stop. Them just has one half, one half, one half, one. And when you look, one in a belly, one in a pram. Sometimes they have a double pram, and then they have one on the back. Hold on.
But but Carl, here's what's interesting. The people should know. In New York, for example, no one complains about the Jewish population. You know? We have a bunch of kids, and some of them are on the system. Quite a bit of them are on the system. They have a bunch of kids. I had somebody I went to school with. He got 8 kids. I mean, he has a good job, but he has 8 kids.
Yeah, but you see, them are finance the responsibility, but them one and a finance the responsibility.
No, but some of those Jewish people, they live off the system. No. Some of the Jewish people live off the system. I know this for a fact. Some of them live off the system.
I'm not going to dispute that.
Yeah, no, they live off the system. Yeah.
Me going to one neighborhood where they consider a rich, wealthy neighborhood. Baby goes in. And I went to one store, one of them organic stores to purchase some organic item. And I was so surprised when I saw a woman in front of me. And when she appeared, the woman have a food stamp card.
Yeah.
And if you see the vehicle that she drive outside.
Yep. Some people know how to use the system.
Yeah, man. So, and that's why the man kind of decides, we have got shut down. Because them do them survey, and them realize who, when they come into the country, who live and get the food stamp the most. 47% of the Americans here. Like, we're not talking about immigrant from the country. We are talking about like Puerto Rico and all them things. Puerto Rico have the highest, 47%,
Of what? Of individuals who are living in the US?
Yeah, one food and the food stamp program. 47%.
But Puerto Rico is a US territory, so they're exempt from this. They're not, right?
Yes, but them the other from that's what I'm saying. Away from the other countries, the immigrant will come in.
But a lot of people from countries are black. They come here and they work. Just think about all the Jamaicans who come here. People are trying to work 2-3 jobs to make money. Some don't, but that's normal across any groups.
I don't want to call no country name, but I work with a country. A lot of them, they come in the country 2-3 years ago. And let me tell you something. You see them? They work. They have people work in the place where they get the food stamp, and they work. They have a job, but they might get paid, and they steal their food stamp.
Yeah.
And we ask them how them do it. And then there's a smile, and the vehicle with them. You can imagine. You see, one of them a driver. Escalade the other day.
Escalade?
He says,
wow.
Yeah, $85,000 I'm saying for it. 85,000 you say for it, and him paying for it a month time. But what them do? Them on food stamp, and then they work some hours here, and then they go out and they do job where they get cash in hand, and that's how they do it. And then they get the food stamp.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying there's not abuse in the system, but every country that have social programs, there's abuse in the system. Every country, whether it's here or someplace else. The question is, when you're doing this, that's almost like saying no Caucasian groups are abusing the system, and that's not true.
Yeah, but when you check the data. They're not a lot.
No, there's a lot. They're just not. No. We have to be very careful on people, because the people who are giving us the data, they manage the data they give us. It's like Trump recently, the economic data that we have, he got rid of the person doing it because he didn't like the numbers. They give you the numbers they want to give you, and that influence, and they control the press. People, we have to realize this. The New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, CBS, all those are controlled by billionaires, or are Trump supporters, What they try to do is control the media and give information.
Control them, man.
Huh?
No, man. Them controlled by the Democrats.
No, wait. Carla, back up. Larry Ellison is Democrat, control CBS now. Jeff Bezos, Amazon is Democrat. Rupert Murdoch is Democrat. Rupert Murdoch is Democrat? Really?
Jeff Bezos is a Democrat.
Jeff Bezos was one of the biggest Trump supporters this year that you saw there. All them people, Trump. Yeah, one Jeff time, Musk was a Democrat. One time, he's no longer a Democrat, is he? Musk controlled Twitter. All those news organizations, they've been very smart. They're buying up on news organizations, these billionaires. They can control the narrative. They can control you. They ain't no Democrats. What some companies do and some people do, though, is they'll give money to both parties because they want to make sure they have influence whoever's in trouble. But they're not Democrats. They're not Democrats.
But Jeff Bezos a Democrat because he endorsed Kamala Harris.
Wasn't that Jeff? So look, as I said before, a lot of companies play the game of making sure they engage with both parties, but they ain't no Democrats. No billionaires are Democrats nowadays because they're thinking about is they want taxes reduced. They want to benefit from. They're not Democrats now. They're not Democrats. Trust me, they're not Democrats. Go look it up. They're not Democrats. All they're focused on is their pockets. That's it. No, Carlo, you're not right on that one there. But I understand your perspective. So wait, may I ask you a question before you go? Ask a question before you go. You have to tell me. Are you a Democrat or Republican?
Me? I vote for who is going to allow the economy to stable so I can take care of myself and my family.
Right. And how do you...
I don't vote for party.
Right. So I have a question for you. Where do you get the credence and the information to inform you about the ability of whoever's been in charge to manage an economy? Where do you get that information from? What's your source? And what factors do you utilize to allow you to make that decision?
Based on what the party, who's going to run, or who is, say, where they call it in our politics and all. The front runner, that's what they call them.
Okay.
And that they call them front runner.
Well, the front runner may be the person who the polls say is leading, right? That's what front runner normally is. But
I'm saying, so I sit and I listen to what they're going to do to stabilize the economy.
Okay.
What they're going to do to allow the citizen of the country to be able to afford even the basic needs that they can take care of their family.
Okay, so I have a question for you before you go further.
Pay them bills.
Right. So based on what you're saying of Kamala and Trump, who gave you that information to inform that your view about that? Who gave you good information? And please tell me what that information was that they told you that made you make a decision.
Okay. I do the assessment. Kamala get her turn. Trump get his turn. I know which one I could be able to go push a cat out of the store versus the one that I can't afford to push.
You're still talking around the question. Which one of those two you'd tell you could push the cat for?
I said, I base.
You told politician Bami the Kala. You told politician Bami.
No. I vote. I don't vote. Listen, and this is the thing, This is the thing with a lot of people. They vote because they like the party, even when the party not do nothing for them.
Right.
I am not diehard to no party because at the end of the day, all of them is friends. And me, whether you support Democrat, I won't hate you and I won't say you're stupid because that's your choice. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I will only say that, hey, it's your choice, but I think you missed the mark. And
Right.
then you ask me why. And then I can say, well, present my facts.
So given all of that,
Mhm.
what did either candidate says that put it to one side or the other about the economy, why you vote in a certain direction?
Wait a second, go again.
What did either, so what the election we just had last year, right? Or the year before
Mhm.
last, the year before last. Because
Yeah.
Trump won and then took office in January. So it's a year he's been in office now.
Right.
So you haven't told me who you voted for. Fine, that's your prerogative. And you want to keep that
Mhm.
confidential. But my
Even though
question
you
is,
try finding out. Yeah.
my question is,
lead on to it, you know.
I'm glad you realize that's where we're going. What did either candidate says that convinced you about their economic policies why you vote in a certain direction?
But the policy why me vote in a certain
Yeah,
direction.
what they told you that convinced you to vote for them?
But I explain again. to
So
you.
wait, so which one? So you still haven't told me which one had the better policy. Which one was better to you in terms of the economy, fixing the economy?
The answer you already. I said I don't vote along party. I vote for the one who is going to make the economy little better.
Right.
You mean 100%. But if the one year over here, so can let me save back a $10 in my pocket
Right.
versus the one over here, so now let me save nothing. I prefer go for the one where I make me save $10.
Right. But what you haven't told me are the factors, are the policies that we're going to put in place.
Yeah.
You haven't told me that because I'm still waiting for that.
You want me go in details so you can say, oh.
No.
I didn't, my mind did tell me say that one year.
No. You know why I say that? Because I don't think most people, and this is not to knock at you because you may know what you're talking about, but I don't think most people understand the economy to understand when a politician says something, whether it makes sense or not. There are two things. One is politicians lie. They're the biggest liars on God's earth. Liars.
Okay.
Wait. Let me finish two things. One, they lie, and two, the general person in the economy, to be honest, don't understand when somebody explains to them what they're going to do to make it work, to know if it's really going to be working, given the factors that they talk about, they're going to do something with to allow it to happen. They don't.
Frankie,
yes.
Understand what you say, right? And like I said, I try not to gravitate to what people say when it comes to politics. Just like if a man come and said to me, hey, the governor said this. You know what I do? Like they will say, oh, the governor said this today. You know what I do? I go check for press conference. And if he had a press conference, I will sit and I listen. And if whatever they say, that say the governor say or the president say, I can say, okay, you was right. Or no, that's not how it go. You understand?
No, I understand. So you're not going to give me. You're being a very good politician tonight.
No, I'm not being a very good politician now. But Frankie, what you have to tell people, this the fact, because you have to make people know that look here, when you vote, move away from the party line and vote accordingly to the one who is going to make the country better.
Right. So do you think this party has made the country better? A year in, have they made the country better?
Frankie, yeah, try to go.
No. I'm just actually no. Wait. Back up. Be honest about this. The question is a general question. It has nothing to do with who you voted for. Ask the general question.
Yeah, but
have they made the country better economically?
No, but that's why I said, but me use
right.
Me say that's why I said, but right here because I say you can vote for your party, but if you are a critical thing that you're fearing, like honest, you can say, well, say the man you do good or the woman you do good. You understand?
Right.
If sign, we can see say the man try. You understand?
Wait. It was no. What but missing some people. This is very important. When Trump was running for office, he says he's going to fix the economy in about a day because he's going to drill. Now, if you understand the economy, how economies work, That's nonsense. That's total garbage. When you say you're going to fix the economy by just drill.
I never heard him say I'm going to fix it.
You know what I do, people? I'll try to find it one day and bring it to him. I'll fix it. First of all,
I never hear it.
He won't fix anything overnight. Everything he won't fix overnight. And he won't drill to fix it. Now, oil is influential in the world in terms of an economy, but oil is not the only factor. We came under COVID where prices were up because demand was high and supply was low. The supply chain was a mess. So when people are talking about the economy, we got to be very careful about what they say and does it make any sense?
You want me to tell you what drive up the economy more, and you may agree or you may not agree, and your listener, they may say this man is stupid or this man is an idiot.
But yeah, so much caveat, but go on.
Everyone to his own. Let me tell you something. What drive up the economy more? When the COVID and the country on a shutdown, and the country get a shock where millions of people come in. Right? Then when it open up now, people are 10 person that compete for one job. You understand?
No, it was the opposite. After COVID, no. After COVID, there were many more jobs available. No. People were locked up in their house, they weren't working.
Yes, there were jobs, but at the end of the day, the business people, them rather the one them who come in and don't have no paper so they can pay them cheap labor. All them businessmen where you hear talk, down this, down that. May I tell you?
Yeah, but a lot of people, but Carla, a lot of people.
What I'm making a point here, and this is a fact. This is a fact. It's happening in the workplace. Is there evidence? A lot of persons who working at in an organization for a period of time, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. You know, so they try to get rid of them. And the one them will just come. They try to use those because they don't have to pay no health insurance. They don't have to give them no increase, that they can start them somewhere down the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just say this, people. Let me say this, caller. In every society, everybody's looking to benefit from the society and sometimes not legal. What do I mean by that? The billionaires avoid paying taxes. The billionaires use offshore accounts. The billionaires use methods that the government create for them to avoid tax. Has Trump ever paid any tax? You know if Trump paid tax? Have we seen the tax return from 2015 saying we give sure tax return? It's 10 years in. Have we seen his tax return? You know why I can't show them? You know why I can't show him tax return them? Kind of pay on tax.
All right, Cranky. Listen, all right. Him don't pay no tax, as what you say.
I'm a billionaire.
Okay. If you don't pay no tax, what will happen to you? You don't pay no tax in a 10 years. What do you think will happen to you?
I will go to jail.
All right. You think, say, Democrats go care if you vote for them or not?
No. I would never vote for a party. Wait. Of course they care because they want my vote. Of course they care. They want my vote.
No. What I'm saying, listen what I'm saying. If you don't pay tax for 10 years,
right?
You and IRS come after you.
Yeah.
You think them care if what party you vote for, them will come for you?
No, they wouldn't. They would probably just because they're Democrats. The Republicans would, but Democrats wouldn't. Republicans would, but Democrats wouldn't.
They wouldn't care.
The Republicans will allow their people who commit crime to get away with that crime. That's been proven, by the way. That's not something over the sky. That's been proven.
We have to move away from them thing there and call a spade a spade.
Yeah, but
look on all the big fraud we are going in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look how long that are going for.
But Carla, come on, Carla, man. Do better than that, man. Carla. Big fraud occur all over the place. Menendez, the Democrat senator from New Jersey, Menendez, got arrested, got convicted, went to jail. When they went after James in New York to say she had mortgage fraud, they had 3 people in Trump's administration who did the same thing that she did. Nobody now sued them. When the guy from that head of Homeland Security, second in Trump, come on, when he had a $50,000 bribe that he took right before he came on board, nobody pursue him. Them don't take the bribe. Them record him on camera. Nobody pursue him. Them say no, them now pursue him. What we talking about? The crimes are done on both sides. The Democrats will lock you up. Republicans will absolve them people. Those things are facts. They're not debatable. So when we're saying these things, I have to smile. Do both parties have a problem? Yes. Do both parties support my people? One a little bit more than the other. It's the lesser of two evil. I can't go with the evil that don't like my people, who don't like me, who want to get rid of me, who don't like what I look like, what I say, what I'm. I can't do that. I can't engage with them.
Frankie, listen to me. Listen to me. Let me tell you something. Me not going to say, no, this one don't like me, that one don't like me, because they say at the end of the day, even me own, your own a color, not like you.
But Carla, there's degrees of things. There's degrees, right? In life, it's always about degrees. How much is it? So you may have problems with your own people, but one hates you and one may dislike you. There are levels to this thing. I know who hates me, and I know who I may have some challenge with.
Okay, so who is that say hate you?
The people that were trying to prevent my people from coming to this country, they hate me. Hate. Real hate. Real hate. Their history show it. The president's father has been alleged to be part of the Ku Klux Klan. He was involved in the 70s in restricting ability of blacks to get discriminated against them in terms of housing. Was sued for that. These things are not. They're not something that's not out in the public domain.
Let me tell us.
And he's part of that whole equation. Yeah, go ahead.
I tell any man, say, you see, all of them people there where you see come over this country here.
Yeah.
You say if it was Africa there, say our Africa country there where El Salvador, Panama, if you check them up, all of those countries join together, go right up, can walk from one, go straight across one border, go to the next. Right up in Argentina. But all the black country, them, you have to take plane or boat. Looking at Caribbean, them, all of them, you have to take plane or boat to go. They can't drive, right?
Okay.
They can drive from all of them, go right up El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, and
yes.
kind of drive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right up go up in Europe.
Okay.
You think, say, if it was if it was some black country there, so you think, say, them not let them in, Casibada? You think them not open them in and let them in, so? Eh?
No, wait. Back up. No one is saying your border should be controlled and managed. No one is saying that. No one is saying that.
Control and manage. We're not talking about that. I'm simply saying, if it was El Salvador was a black country and Honduras and Venezuela, all of them was predominant black. You think so them not open the border and let them in? All Mexico, them that put a border a long time. Long time.
Okay.
So people have to realize and understand, say, listen, a time for black people to open their eye and come together and realize, say, look here, and we alone have to stand up for ourselves. Because what them do? Them are use the same from long time when they do the slave and trick when the slave them rebel when they take away the book from them or whatever. And then them go educate one of them. Read and write tricks and can come quicker. When the white man preach them and tell them what they want to tell them, then them are rebel, they don't listen. So them use a black man. And at the same thing you see them are doing in politics nowadays. Them rise up a black man or a black woman and then get rich and then tell you what they want to tell you. And tell us that 1 year free and 1 year stand up free and 1 year this, and them been using that over the years. And what you say happen? Why don't black people all the while if they have somebody out here like say God they give them God they put them down here and say, yeah, you for fight for black people. And I see no other race to do that. Uncle black man.
Yeah, but I think we have to understand that's why DEI was important, because blacks are sometimes not afforded to be part of the process. Right? You don't get access, you're restricted. There are mechanisms and institutions in place to restrict you to be able to get access. People don't seem to realize that. It's a fact. It's not even
them not educating themselves, they're not reading. Them sit down the time when them take some time and read. Yeah, them not reading. So them not gather no knowledge.
But I wouldn't say 3/4 of blacks. I would say that goes across race, but we probably spend more time sometimes trying to be entertained versus to be educated and informed. That's not debated, but I'm not going to say 3/4. It's not 3/4. But we don't have, in Jamaica, they call the thing called links. I live in Jamaica, we're in links. It runs in the fact that people have connections, they have relationships. Well, the US is no different. The US have some meritocracy components, but it also have the same kind of links relationship situation. It has that. Every country has that. But but it also goes by race also a lot of times. It's not just, well, that relationship because, we go to the same school. The racial component can't be differentiated from the whole equation. So here's my point. Here's my last point that you call out, which is very important. Because you give me some information that made me kind of consider where you are, where you come out. I understand that we're talked about, this is talked about a lot, which is blacks spend a lot of time supporting the same party and can't show anything from it. Now, this president has been in power for about 5 years. What can we show from him being in power for those who voted for him? I didn't, and I can say it. I have no problem saying who I voted for and my rationale for voting for them. May I say this not in English? When now I vote for nobody who don't like me. I'm not voting for anybody who doesn't like me and my people. It's not happening. Not happening. Who would prefer to see me not being on this earth? I'm not voting for you. Cannot happen.
Maybe you don't understand who like if I want to like.
Yeah, but it may be the lesser of two evils, and I know evil when I see it.
Well, let me tell you something. All right, this question I never asked you. Here, you make a point on it about racism.
Yeah.
So you are one of them who would teach your viewers about racism. What would you tell them, sir? It exists?
I say racism, yes, of course it exists. Racism is about, we could stop conflating racism with being prejudice. Racism is about power and inferiority and superiority. Prejudice is I don't like you because of whatever reason. Black people can't truly be racist in the context of how racism is defined because it's about power and superiority. You can be prejudiced, you don't like a race. Well, how we want to, how racism is defined, or historical was defined, I'm looking at a more recent definition. It's about superiority. It's about who have power. It's about who is inferior. And blacks are not the superior race on this planet. Whether they want to think it, view it, how it works, it's not. So in the traditional sense of how racism was defined, the way I know it, I can't be a racist. I can be prejudiced. I cannot like you because you're of some other race. But if we think about the hierarchy of human beings and race on this planet, it's Caucasian at the top of the chart. You may have some other group like the Asians, or you want to define Asian, whether it's Indian or Chinese. They're all in a group struggling to find out. Then you may have there's some of the brown people. So it may be other groups in that mix, and then you have blacks and Hispanic at the bottom of the totem pole, and blacks are the ones. And in the Hispanic population, you have hierarchy there too. The lighter you are, the better it is. So blacks are at the bottom. They're fighting with the American Indians. That's where we are. And if you look at the hierarchy of the educational system here and the compensation construct in terms of who get paid what wealth is and money is, blacks are at the bottom fighting for scraps and beating up each other. We're not up in the upper echelon. And in fact, in this country, the highest average compensation is not white people, It's Indians. Indians have the highest compensation, and then some group in Filipinos. It's not Caucasians. So Caucasians are focused on the wrong race in terms of who they want to pressure and who they don't like and who they hate. I'm not saying all Caucasians, but some Caucasians, especially the ones who are in power now. They have it mixed, but they want to maintain political power, and it comes through the electoral process, and they don't want to be the minority, and this is what this is all about. All 6 things that I mentioned tonight, all is the same thing. It's restricting immigration, restricting population, restricting citizenship. So therefore, I will maintain my majority and do what the hell I want to do.
Since I've been in this country, I've been watching how black vote. Black vote as the president is their savior, and they are the one going to save them, right? They don't vote for city managers. They don't vote for commissioners. They don't vote for the most important persons, them who are going to develop them community. No. But when election, they run go vote the president, right? No. The white people, they go out, or they will go out and they will vote. Right? So when they vote, they demand what they want to be done in the community. Black people don't do that. You understand? They don't vote. They don't go vote in a presidential election. They don't vote in a them little mayor election unless it's on the ballot on in a general election. But like if you have like a normal little election, like for a city manager, a judge, or a sheriff or something, them not go vote.
So I don't disagree with the concept that the voting numbers are significantly less outside the national election, but I'll say this, and people may not realize this. The process of voting in some of those elections is overrated in terms of who you'd want in the seat. What do I mean by that? The candidates are selected, are managed by a process. They have this hierarchy about how that works. And what they do is they put forward a candidate they want to put forward. I had a friend of mine who won a seat. I'm not going to say what role they won in, but they won a seat. And they were telling her she got to fall in line. And she's like, I ain't falling in no line for nobody. And she won because she walked there on the ground, walking, doing what she does. Now she's part of the process because to elevate in the process, you got to be part of the process. But she would never got in the first place because they were saying it's not her time. That's why you see people like Jeffries and all of them didn't vote for Mandani because it was Mandani's time. But there's the same old party tricks that they do. They do the same old thing over and over again. It's boring. It's manipulative. It's not something which is orchestrated. It's not something that just happened based on who are best for any given role. That's why some people just dismiss the process because they know in New York, for example, whoever that party chair in that bar that you live in put forward a candidate, they're going to win. Okay, is anybody voting Republican? Hey, Colin Quest, as usual, sir, good night. Colin Quest is a big supporter of the channel. Hey, if Colin don't give me no money, no money sometime, you know. Hey, Colin, thanks for the super chat, Colin. If Colin, I just got my statement from, Carla, thanks for the call, Carla. Appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. And thanks for listening. Peace out. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. So people, I don't want to beat anyone in terms of who they vote for. But I want to make sure, by the way, Colin, thanks again. I have to tell you 100 one time. By the way, people, but I want to make sure people fully understand when they make decision that they're informed about the decision. And some people say to me, hey, Crank, you're going like you know everything. I know enough to be dangerous. That's what I always say. And I learn from my audience and I try to impart what the knowledge that I've gained over years. And I'm very seasoned, meaning that I'm old. So I can't want a conversation about most things. Can we spend time? I read enough of people. You see me do them show ya? When I come to the show in 2 minutes, you know, me done this thing I set up from about 4 o'clock. I spend for the next 3 hours. I go through different things to supply whatever information I need to get to come have a good discussion. I just come here and just talk for 2 minutes. Even me know certain things, me go refresh my memory to make sure me not say something out of context, right? Because it's very important when you come to try to have credibility. Now, some people may think that I have no credibility, especially certain people on the channel, but I do try to be as informed as possible to have this conversation. I don't like to talk about things I don't know. And I also try to be very broad-based in my thinking. I was just having a conversation with my nephew today. Because my nephew just got his citizenship. So my nephew, you hear me talk about my nephew and nieces. My niece ain't got hers yet. And I'm kind of concerned. Because the way things are going, people, you should be very concerned. The process to get your citizenship and naturalization, they're making it so difficult now, it's hard to do. Like he's been here for 7 years, so he got his green card in 2 years. When I came to the States, I think my mom came here. So my mom came here. By the time she first came here and she landed and we came here, I think it was 18 months. Meaning she got her thing to come. She came and then she filed for us subsequently. I think I was in high school. And the whole process from her land, and she didn't file for us right away. So it probably took about 6 to 8 months from when we started. It's a long time ago, people. But I'm saying the process has been extended. So my nephew took 2 years. And after that, obviously, citizenship 5 years. So he's been here, 7 years now. But I made sure the day they were eligible, then file. You pressure them, file, get over it. Get a citizenship, get it over with. Because when I first came, I was here for a long time before I get mine. I was like, I ain't getting no citizenship. I'm Jamaican. I didn't realize I wasn't truly Jamaican, but I thought I was. In terms of what citizenship I was. But I was like, I get my Jamaican citizenship, American thing. I was being stupid. So if you're in this country, if you're in this country, people, and you're eligible for citizenship, get it. ADC, I apologize for that. I set up both channels, and I don't know why it wouldn't show up on both. That's weird, actually. But I want to say Colin Quest again. Thank Colin theme contribution. Colin, as usual, I always support the channel. My youth, peace out, bless. But I, in terms of politics, I always tell people this: you should always vote. And they're like, I don't like either party. But by not voting, you are voting. And what do I mean? If you don't vote, so you don't vote for party A versus B, and party B won. You voted for party B because you didn't vote for party A, who have a better chance of winning because you voted for them. So you should always find out, and politicians are hard to read sometimes, but at least make a decision for either party. Don't say I'm not voting. It doesn't make sense to me. Be part of the process. If you're not voting, then you're not part of the process. And people should change that thinking. And, am I totally satisfied with the Democratic Party and how they operate? No, I think, as the caller said rightly, as we go back to the conversation we have had, which is, my view is the whole 75 countries being restricted, even though we have some countries there that may have Caucasian majority, it was about race. To me, there's no ambiguity in that. And it's always been about race. Now, one could say it's about developing countries and countries who don't have a lot of resources. It's about race. It's about race. It's about race. It's about race. And the concern by the majority that they won't maintain their majority status. But I can tell you, it should be a wake-up call for a lot of the countries who are of my persuasion that they need to realize, China made a decision years ago to be self-sufficient by 2025. That means they don't have to rely upon nobody else in terms of how they can create an economy. They have a 1.4 billion people that they can be self-sufficient. They can create enough, they can have everything they want within their borders to allow them to operate and have an internal economy versus going external. They have achieved that, frankly. They have achieved that. Right? Now, we're a much smaller country as Jamaica, but we have a large Black population across the globe, in Africa, the Caribbean, etc. A lot of them have migrated in different countries. And we keep saying the same boring things. We have to get together, and nothing happens. I think individual country have to get their act together and then work as a collective. And Jamaica's problem is Jamaica is too reliant upon the U.S. Way too reliant on the U.S. As I said, when the U.S. sneezed, just barely sneezed, Jamaica's on its deathbed, has pneumonia, dying. When Jamaica had Hurricane Melissa, how much money did the U.S. give Jamaica? You see, England and Jamaica about a couple of million, after them Jamaica resources for years, and Jamaica a few $1 million. Did I give them back? No, until now. I'll give it back to them. The U.S. didn't do much better. A lot of those countries didn't do a lot. It was the expats. It was not the expats. It was the diaspora who pour resources to Jamaica. And I don't think Jamaica appreciates diaspora like it should. And the most significant asset diaspora have is the cranium, is the intellectual capital, and it's not being leveraged as it should. If Jamaica create a friendly environment, and the culture in Jamaica has to change also, people. The culture has to change. The culture is part of the problem. The culture is Jamaica's biggest problem, to be honest. It has to change. The culture don't change, country will struggle. But it's not just Jamaica, it's the Caribbean as a whole. It's the Caribbean as a whole. Now, I have always said this. I have no idea why any person on this earth don't like someone because they're a different persuasion. It's counterintuitive to me. Even if we're materially different as people, our construct was different, how we make up are different. I still don't know why you dislike somebody because they're different from you. I don't understand it. It's weird. When I used to be in corporate, my team was extremely diverse. And I got along with all of them, and they got along with me. Because we all realize that we're there for a purpose and a cause, and we got to work together as a collective to achieve that common goal. I could never understand, why somebody don't like somebody because they have something about them that's a little bit different. It made no sense to me. None. And the more you get to know people, the more you realize it's wasted energy and wasted time and doesn't make sense. And we keep doing that as a society. especially when your time here on this earth is short. You should just come here, make sure everybody have life. And by the way, I want to say one thing before I go. I've been thinking about this the other day. I'm going to do a show on this too. So I'm going to do 2 more shows hopefully next week. One is about the Jamaica currency and what the hell happened, where it went from, 70, 80 cents on the dollar to 155 or 8 now. Another one, which is more controversial, which is very controversial. Should I even talk about that one? Get some water, people. This is a more controversial topic. Should the world have billionaires? And a case for and against the world having billionaires. Probably no milk come out. That's an interest. I was thinking about that today for a long time, and thinking about Musk getting $50-something billion payout, and the judge blocking in Delaware, and back and forth that they had. The ungodly number that a board could grant a person. I don't care how good they are. I don't care how much they own. Is it okay for somebody to own $500, $600 billion when people are starving and the world is struggling? But also the corresponding side, which is, why should someone who is motivated, spending time working, why should have the resources taken away from them? In California, that they have something on the ballot whereby they're saying billionaires should be taxed on the amount of money they have. I think over $1 billion. They want to tax them like 1% of that number, which means if you have assets and you don't sell the assets, so you have tons of houses and businesses, but you don't have no cash, you have to sell something of those to pay it, and they're threatening to flee California. And I thought that was interesting, actually. You're a billionaire now. You can't spend off the money. Cranky Jamaica needs a government system like Singapore. That's an interesting comment. I think Jamaica needs an economic system like Singapore. I'm not sure a government. Singapore is not a democracy. It's an autocracy. And I struggle with autocracies. But I also think democracy in its traditional sense is flawed and should be looked at like different countries. You know, the countries that have been more successful in recent years have been in non-democratic countries. Now, one could say, well, South Korea is successful and Japan was successful. I think Japan's success probably stagnated in the 90s. But look where China is. Look where Singapore is. Those countries are doing really well economically, and they're not democracies. Now, Singapore, I would call it more soft dictatorship versus China more draconian. But you know, there's some countries, democracies like Taiwan or South Korea, that have done well. But some of the more autocratic countries where the government involved itself in having a more, for lack of a better term, socialist government, but a capitalist system, but not like the European system, which is democracy. It's more of, they provide social programs, but they have a dictatorship, but they also have a capitalist system. They moved from communism, where it was a dictatorship, along with communal type construct with properties, like what Cuba has, or probably have, because Cuba doesn't really exist anymore. America has just destroyed Cuba. To where it is today, where they have changed the economic system, but still maintain that dictatorial way of operating. You say it went from 2-1 in the 70s to the present. No, it wasn't 2-1 in the 70s. I think I looked at the numbers from the 40s and 50s. I think it was 70 cents on the dollar. And it was up until the 80s. Then the 80s, it went to like a 4-for-1, 5-for-1. I was doing some research the other day. In the 90s, it changed. The turn of the century just got out of control. The way it started to change was 2 things in the 70s. I'm going to talk about it. I shouldn't talk about it now. But I'm going to mention it. 2 things in the 70s. One was managed economic policy, socialist policy, which had to be paid for. But more importantly, the oil crisis, where inflation was out of control, and Jamaica never truly recovered and wasn't helped by the corruption in the society, to be honest. Let me just come back to that question. If I missed your comment before, people, please forgive me. Tuffy said, I don't see anything wrong with billionaires in the world, especially if they work and make sacrifices while some people don't put out any efforts. But that's the challenge, Tuffy, which is, not every billionaire make their money by sacrifices. Someone inherited. And to be a billionaire, you have to exploit people. What do I mean by that? If you're to make a profit, you have to underpay me to make a profit. That's the way I view it. But you can't spend $1 billion. So not everybody control their circumstances. Some people work really hard and still can't make a good living. Right? So you have to ask the question, societally, what's fear? That's the question. What's fear? I think being a billionaire is outrageous, to be honest. How do you measure success? I think success, as they say, is in the eyes of the beholder. What do you mean success for you? For me, being a billionaire could be a success, but I'm miserable as hell. For you, just having enough to support your family is fine, but you're happy as a lark, right? It all depends on how you define success for yourself. Would allow you to get the basic things in life. Some people just want the basic. They don't want extravagance. Some people, success for them is extravagance. You have to define your own success. There's a traditional way of defining success, which is you start at a certain point, you generate economic wealth, or you generate wealth, and the more financial wealth, and that wealth allows you to afford what you want to afford. For some people, that's success. Some people have a lesser view of what success entails. I can tell you in some places, when I go to Europe, for example, in England, talking to people, there are some people there who view success as, I can provide for my family. I don't need all that excess wealth. It's waste. And there are some people who I've worked with who, the more they get, the more they want. They're never satisfied. So I think success is the individual that defines success for themselves. I can't define success for someone. I have a view of success. It means for me. Success for me has a lot of factors to it. Financial is a key component, which is, can I support myself and my family and even my siblings, to be honest? All right. To me, success in 2026 is, at this point, since I'm retired, success is I'm competing with my nephew. I was going to say this because you've been talking about my nephew a lot. We have a lot of engagement. I have two nephews actually here with me. So they're embarrassing me, people. I don't want to digress from the topic we're talking about. They're embarrassing me. One is actually getting buff, which is very disconcerting because he teases me all day. And the second one has done nothing. He don't exercise and he has a six-pack. And you can see I'm not even close to being cut. So I'm gonna do some videos on this actually. I've actually bought some gym equipment. I've had some before, but I expand upon it and he's working with me to do it. Because he gym every day. I might turn my little garage in the gym and we have a competition to work out. So in 2 months, I'm supposed to be able to compete with them. So we'll see how that work out. But anyway, I digress, but yeah. So if we say, take LeBron, for example, his life as a child means good. It was terrible, so he should be asleep to enjoy life. Yeah, I like I said before, people like LeBron, I was talking to somebody about LeBron today. I want to know who the person is because you guys know this person. But I communicated with him about LeBron today. LeBron is really an example for any person of any race where you maximize your potential, where you live life the right way. At least it appears that way, right? We don't know what happened behind the scenes. But I'll give you an example. When you are a phenom at a very early age, there's a lot of pressure on you. You manage that pressure really well. You overcome obstacles. You come from a one-parent household. You bring up with you not only yourself by your bootstrap, but the people around you. You create a group, and those people become your manager, your confidant, not your sycophants like some people. And you elevate yourself and you elevate them with you, take them along with you, and you're successful. And you hear no controversy about you apart from on the basketball court. And you're 41 years old. I was saying that to somebody today. There is no other athlete in the history of the world who has been excellent throughout their entire career for this period of time in a sport which requires your physical being. I'm not talking about golf or those sports. You physically have to be able to be successful when you perform at a high level for that length of time to this age and still doing it. But one of the things is not by chance. Yes, he got gifts, but he spent I'm understanding that what we've communicated $1.5 million a year to get his body to the right place to allow him to play from year to year. For good family life, it appears just the epitome of success, not just financially, but it appears in life. I say I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I don't think that should be commended. But I'm gonna go back to the subject at hand and just say this about tonight's discussion. It should be clear when you have policies, all geared toward the same thing. Because if you throw them all at once, people will just get perturbed and it would be confusing, but it'll also show what you're doing. If you roll them out individually and you come up with excuses why you're doing them, if you close down the borders, if you have ICE going around just taking people off the street because they look different, if you have birthright citizenship that you're pursuing, if you have diversity initiative and DEI that you've totally got rid of, if you're banning countries where the people don't look like you, and you're throwing a few to say you're not being a certain way, and those few would never be is a problem anyway, then it says who you really are. This is not about the 75 countries being banned. It's not about benefits that they come here and they take advantage of. It's about their persuasion. And we shouldn't confuse and conflate these things. It's their persuasion. I don't think it's ambiguous. I don't think it can be debated. I think it's very obvious. You may think you're being subtle when you give your rationale and use the Minnesota fraud as a basis to substantiate what you're doing and say you have evidence, but you can't necessarily show. But it's very obvious to anyone who is objective in their assessment that what you're trying to do is stifle certain people from being permanent residents here. And I would hope that the leaders of those countries realize what's being done, realize they have to pivot, realize that they need to put together some long-term plans to enable themselves to be self-sustaining and to enable not to rely upon you and work around you. And as I've said before, when the US make these decisions, China doesn't have to do anything. People are going to fall in their laps. And look what Canada is doing with China. The US is next door. It's convenient to trade with the US. They have a much more relationship with China because China is not about morality. China is about business. They're not confusing business with anything else. And the US is using all sort of means and ways. They either beat you down, take what you have, as they've done with Venezuela, and they want to do it with Greenland, or they use more covert way of, having you go against each other to then allow them to get access to whatever your resources are not. When the US went to Iraq, it was about oil. When we went to Venezuela, it was about oil. When they're in Guyana, even though it's a more traditional way, it's about exploiting Guyana for their oil. And go read some of the things in Guyana, you'll see what I'm talking about. In Greenland, they say it's about protection. No, it's about a lot of natural resources there they want to exploit. So it's all about the country. And when the US go into countries, they ain't invest in those countries. How much investment the US has done in Jamaica as a country? Like what China has done. China just came on the scene and gave Jamaica roads, even though Jamaica have to pay for it. How many years? But at least they give Jamaica a way of communicating, of having more commercial activities and commuting and engaging, and have ports to bring goods and ship goods. The US ain't doing none of that. They just want to take, and don't give. Jaban says, you reference structure in your discussion regarding autocratic countries related to democratic countries, but there are some factors that can distort the conclusion. No, I think I'm always concerned about freedom. So in China, in Singapore, they have great economic success. That cannot be debatable. But it comes at a cost. So the question you ask yourself is, are you willing to subjugate yourself and have less freedom for more economic success? Or are you saying, hell no, I want my freedom and I'll figure it out afterwards? I'm going to give you a perfect example of where this is being played out, but not in the economic sense. El Salvador. El Salvador had one of the worst murder rate and crime rate in the world. They had a young new president who was the mayor of San Salvador. And he has just restricted freedom. The crime has gone down, but he locked up a bunch of people. Good night.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Am I speaking with Cranky?
Yes, Cranky. Who am I speaking to?
Hey, this is Clark.
Clark, how you doing? What do you have to say, Clark?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me tonight. Just listening to the conversation.
Yep.
I have more questions than I do position to try to posit my opinions. I just want to get kind of your perspective on the things. And pardon me if I haven't maybe got it in the earlier portion of the show. I've been listening for about the last half hour to 40 minutes.
Okay.
So essentially, I'm trying to gather, and I'll play what we typically call devil's advocate, although I hate that term. What I'm trying to understand, just at the surface level, what is your apprehension, let's say, towards this position that the U.S. is taking in terms of the visa ban for permanent residency as well?
Well, there are a number of them, right? So let's just think about at a high level why this ban materialized. The ban is part of a larger initiative to restrict brown and black people from being citizens of this country or permanent residents of this country, with the view that the white population is not increasing and therefore they won't be the majority by 2050. So we have to find a way to prevent that from happening. And they're undertaking various measures to do so. But more importantly, a lot of people migrate from the developing world to improve their financial situation and that of their families. That will not go away. A lot of people migrate because they want to bring their families with them subsequently. They're not here. If they're not citizens, that will not happen, right? Because they're now in limbo. A lot of people have aspirations to have a better life that'll be taken away from them. So there are a lot of different factors and concern that informs my view about this. And the basic one also is that it's not fear. If you're going to have this policy that benefits are being exploited, if that's the rationale you want to provide, then make it blanket that, you know what? I'm going to make it blanket across the world because I think, yes, from a degree standpoint, there's some countries where their citizens, their personnel may do it more than others, but it's done by the entirety of the population, as far as I know. The people who come here, whether they're Caucasian, black, whatever, some exploit the system. That's not debatable. So yeah, that's my concern.
Okay. So continuing down this devil's advocate road, why should, in this case, brown and black people have a quote unquote right to enter the United States in terms of permanent residency visas?
Well, I mean, they should have the same right like every other immigrant who want to come here. So why aren't we banning Western Europe? Why do we give South Africans special privilege to come here and live, saying they be persecuted when a lot of people around the world are being persecuted? Why we carve out some Afrikaners who have been perpetrators and being persecuting people, black people, for God knows how long? Why they get special privileges? It's all about race. And that's not even debatable. That's not even something that's controversial. We know what it is when we see it. So you're giving privilege to Western Europe. You give privilege to Asians. You give privilege, first of all, if you think about people who migrate, if you look at countries, the country that has the biggest migration of all countries from a total standpoint is India, not necessarily the US, but 80 million Indians are living overseas who migrated from India. So they populate different countries. Now, do they contribute to countries, maybe a different race of others? Yes. But if you're going to ban blacks and brown from coming here, why aren't you banning other races from coming here? What's that about? You're saying that they're the only ones who abuse systems? And firstly, it's the US and Western Europe that destroy these people in their countries, take their resources, rape them, kill them, maim them. That's not even debatable. And then tell them they want to see them. They don't want them around. The reason why Haiti is where Haiti is, it's France and then the US that destroyed Haiti. That's not Haiti that's destroying itself. We always say black people destroy themselves and black people are not organized because there's orchestration that drives that. I was talking to someone today about something, which is this. Some of you guys are too young to know this, or you may see it without, over time or later on in your years. But when I was growing up, they had Tarzan movies. We had one Caucasian male go into Africa and kill off all these black males and beat up all these black males. Hollywood at that point was sending a message about the superiority of the Caucasian male. Now we know physically, if we think about track and field or anything else, physically, that's not the case. But yet, it was about intellect and how stupid we are as a people. And it was perpetrated through the media or a mode of communication to tell the world, these are inferior people to us. They're stupid. And that has permeated society at large for the longest. I'll give you another example. Even with the American Indians, let's think about this. When I was growing up, they had cowboy movies, John Wayne, all these people, right? When you used to watch those movies, people, you want the cowboy to win because the cowboys were the victims. Can you imagine this? The perpetrator, the savage people, because they were savages who did these things. The Indians were deemed to be the savages and you hated them, you want them killed because they portrayed the Indian in a certain light. And the person who used their guns to kill them was deemed to be the victim. It's amazing how that works. And now what we have in today's society, because we're more civilized, the Washington Post, the New York Post, Fox News, now CBS, are being bought by billionaires who are controlling the narrative because they know. And then X owned by and by the way, these are all Caucasians, by the way. This is not me made up. X owned by Musk. They control the narrative, which you read, and they tell you what they want to tell you. And a lot of people believe that's facts. All they're getting is facts. And therefore, it influences behavior and decision making. It's amazing how that works.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I agree. A few more points. I don't want to hold you long, but
no problem.
I will say this has definitely piqued my interest in terms of the history of migration, specifically Black and brown people into the U.S. Cranky, you're older than I am. I don't know. It seems like post 1960s into the 70s, 80s, 90s is when and correct me if I'm wrong or give me insight if you can, is that when the floodgates really opened in terms of the West promoting the migration of Black and brown people? I guess in the case of the United States, we know about Windrush in England, right? That was the 60s, Windrush?
Yeah, so Windrush was sort of late 60s, early 70s, but started after World War II. All that was Europe needed to be rebuilt after World War II, so they had people from around the world migrate there, especially a lot of Jamaicans, because people don't realize this. There weren't a lot of Trinidadians migrating because they had oil, they had money, right? Jamaicans migrated a ton. That's why you see a lot of, it manifests itself to the footballers in England, for example. A lot of them had Jamaican heritage. The Ian Wright, the Andy Cole, they were all Jamaicans at one point, and then the Africans started coming across, right? But it was Jamaican who go there in factories. My parents did. My parents was in England in the 60s. I have a bunch of cousins and stuff over there. My uncles and aunts, they all went to England from Jamaica to rebuild after World War II. So that's why you had that migration. We started later in the US, right? US was a trickler for a while until like the 80s and 90s. And after that, because the US became the destination, because the opportunities here were so much. In England, people weren't doing that great. It was few people to me who Blacks moved to England who did really, really well. A lot of them only did okay. But what they did really well was remittances came from England a lot. And after a while, that started changing because the US became so prosperous. People stopped going to England and go to the US. And it wasn't that difficult to get to the US in the 70s and 80s. Now it's ridiculous.
The idea I'm also playing with is this whole notion of national sovereignty in terms of, right, we say a country should or could has the right to make whatever decisions is in the best interest of that country. Now we know what the US, or at least I share your opinion as the why the United States is now pulling this particular migration tactic. Now they are saying, yes, we'll continue to permit student visas, we'll continue to permit tourist visas. But as far as the permanent migrant, that's being put on a pause, and the narrative we're being given is because these 75 countries, people from these countries have a propensity to be on public assistance at the highest rate, however true or untrue that may be or not. I don't know. On the face of it, I don't agree with this move. But objectively speaking, like, let's say this wasn't the United States. Objectively speaking, if that's the narrative being given, I struggle to see where a national population would have pushback outside of those individuals maybe being a part of critical industries, whether it be agriculture,
here's the problem though. When you're applying something, apply it uniformly and apply it fairly. But when you're going to give me some excuse to justify your decisions, I have a problem with that. I have no problem with someone saying, you know what, nobody can come to my country. But make it everyone, not selective. If you say you don't want me to come to your country because I'm a terrorist and I want to kill you, that's a different story. If you're going to give me
Frankie, would you receive this better if the Trump administration just came out and said, look, we need to put a pause to migration because we need to reshore our idea of American imagery, population, demographic, makeup, aka more white folks. That's why we're doing this. Would you receive that better?
Probably not. To be honest, to be fair, no, to be fair, because I would think. But here's the thing, though. I've said this before, which is I do understand. Here's what I do understand, right? And I've said this to other people. And you asked a very good question. It's a fair question to ask. I flipped this. I said to people, look, I understand why Caucasians are doing this. I do understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand.
Yes,
So
yes.
here's the rationale, people, because I've said this to people and they don't really get it. But I want when you apply something, do it fairly, right? Because you and I are black, we don't think a Nigerian and Jamaican is the same thing related to Jamaica. Same way I don't see an English person, Caucasian, and an American person the same thing, but it seems to be going that way, right? You bring in South Africans because they've been persecuted. You're not bringing people from Sudan who have been persecuted. You're not bringing people from other countries being persecuted. So what's that about? Secondly, I understand the concept of you saying, look, let's flip it as you're saying, which is a fair question. People got to think about this too, because I try to be fair. If Jamaica is said to be 70-something% black now, but it's a misnomer because they're not counting mixed people in that number. And in today's world, rightly or wrongly, if you have any semblance of another race in your blood, and you're Caucasian, you're not Caucasian. It could be 99% Caucasian, not Caucasian, which is like weird. But society accepts it, which is wrong. But let's say Jamaica is 80% black, and then it becomes 70% black, it becomes 60. I'm sure Jamaicans would be concerned and say that needs to stop.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That is not debatable. So I understand that concept. But the methodology that you employ to justify this and giving your history is a problem. You took these people from another continent. They work free for you for all these years. You treat them like crap, right? Just the black Americans, right? And you don't give them nothing, no reparations, no nothing to help them to elevate themselves. So you're being unfair. Then you bring these other people in from other countries. You destroy the Jamaicans of the world by taking all this intellectual capital that they nurture and support. Because the people who come here now, it's not just about people who come here because it's a family tie, They bring a lot, they take all the best teachers from Jamaica and the best engineers and the best doctors, right? So you rate these countries of their resources, the intellectual capital, and then you say, I don't want the other people that's coming in. You go away. That can't be right. That cannot be right. And wait, by the way, you're not supporting those countries either. You just take their capital, the human capital, you're not helping them, you're not supporting them. Treat them like crap. That's gotta be right. So you can't be a hypocrite when you're doing this. I'm not, as I said, I understand why they're doing some of this, but you're being a hypocrite the way you operate. The way you execute is very hypocrite. I know people who have come here because they have certain skill set. And it wasn't difficult for them to come here. And they brought their whole family here. But let's say you don't have certain skill set and you work at farm work, which Americans don't want to do. They may bring you here for that, but they want to send you back home after you're done because they don't want you. So it's just an unfair process. And we know what the Western world has been doing this, right? Europe is complaining a lot about immigration. The same Europe where Belgium killed millions of Congolese. The same Europe that take all the artifacts and all the history and have it in a museum. The same Europe would take all their natural resources. The same Europe still doing that nowadays by getting them tuppence of this in Jamaica or a minutia of what the value of their natural resources were. Take it to their place and make themselves richer. Because some places in Europe ain't got no natural resources. They rate these countries blind, and some of these countries sell themselves out. I'm going to give you an example of a perfect example, Carla. Perfect example. Guyana. Go read the Guyana construct about Guyana oil and what's transpiring, how much they get paid by Exxon. It's that contract is not mutually beneficial. That contract is so bad. The people from Guyana who signed the contract should go to jail. I'm dead serious. I'm not people. I'm serious. They should go to jail. Because I will say allegedly, they could not sign that contract in good conscience. No matter how dumb they are, there have to be other factors drive them signing that contract. Trust me. It's unconscionable. And no guy in the government wanted to renegotiate the contract. Why should Exxon going to renegotiate? They said, no, we're not renegotiating. I'll give you an example. Part of guy in the contract is they get 3% of certain net profits from oil. When the standard average construct across the globe in a lot of different countries is between 10 and 15%, for example.
But what's the alternative, Frankie?
The alternative was, wait. I don't sign. No. I find a different oil company to work with, not you. I want fair. So if 10 is the lowest numbers, has to be between 10 and 15%, and you're getting 3%.
You see, Guyana's in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And look at what the position that the U.S. is taking. New Monroe Doctrine. China, you cannot operate in the Western Hemisphere. So that knocks China out. China can't go into Guyana. I mean, with the position that the administration is taking. Russia cannot go anymore. So who are the other oil players that are going to go into Guyana? I mean,
no. So here's the thing, though. No, you have BP. You have a lot of different companies going,
yeah,
right? Yeah, the companies can go in. I mean, if you think about Saudi Arabia, how they operate, I would have thought. So here's what I think about life. If I'm going to do something, I have to have benchmarks. So, for example, if Jamaica find oil, I read something in Jamaica where you're looking for oil between, say, I think it's like Portland and Westmoreland on that east belt, south going east, whatever. And some English companies said they have some contract, which is they say it's the most favorable contract they've ever signed in history. Well, we ain't seen the oil yet. We ain't seen the exploration yet. I'd love to see that because God knows I'll be beating that to death. Because if it's better than the guy in a contract, then you know how bad that is, right? But the point I'm making is that when you're doing anything in life, you have benchmarks. So, for example, I'm going to sign an oil contract. I want to see what Saudi Arabia has done. I want to see what Kuwait has done. I want to see what the United Emirates have done because they seem to have done well in making sure their people benefit from these oil contracts that they've undergone, right? And that's my starting point. I may not be an expert, but at least I have a starting point. I ain't going to let Exxon rate me. You know how much billion Exxon getting on the Guyana? I looked at the numbers one time. There's something like $70-something billion of cost there. I think something like cost they're incurring first before they start getting What are you talking about? Get out of my country. That's why Venezuela nationalized their oil situation, which didn't really help them. I think Chavez was a mess. They nationalized it, but the U.S. got kicked out and only Chevron was there. That's part of the problem. And here's another thing, Carla, which is really interesting. When the U.S. talk about Cuba being destroyed, or Venezuela and Venezuelan 500,000 migrating to the U.S. and a bunch of them go to South America, who destroyed Venezuela economy? The U.S. destroyed the Venezuela economy. The U.S. is the one sanctioned them. So the U.S. create problems for you. And in the Caribbean, I've said this before, why Jamaica have so much murders? We don't see that same murder rate in other parts of the world, in some other parts of the world, like in Europe, where guns are limited, where in the UK, you have a lot of knife crime, but it's different shooting people with a gun versus a knife. All them guns come from the US. So you create all these problems for these countries, and then you kick them out. So you don't want to be around you because they're, what do you call them, SO countries? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Where do Haiti's guns come from? Does Haiti manufacture guns? But that's the point I'm trying to make, which is this. You create all these problems for these countries. You don't really invest in them. You take from them, right? Think about it. When bauxite was leaving Jamaica, the raw earth meats leave Jamaica. They get the result of that. So the aluminum comes back. The aluminum costs more than the raw earth. So if I sell your earth for $10 and the aluminum costs $20, I'm in $10 deficit. It's just system doesn't work. Systems.
When I look at this, I try to be a realist. When you are the leader of a nation, let alone anything beyond that, a superpower, there are no easy solutions here. There are just trade-offs. There's what is the least bad deal I can take, specifically when you are on the doorstep in terms of the Caribbean and Latin America of a superpower in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. Jamaica. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is a neo-imperialistic endeavor that is going to be embarked on by this Trump administration. It looks like, starting with the recent events in Venezuela. Looks like Cuba is next in terms of cutting them off now with the oil from Venezuela to get their government to collapse. And who knows what can happen next beyond that. I look at the Guyana situation and I say, or I imagine from the standpoint of the leadership there, we know oftentimes leaders cut a deal to preserve themselves and the other elites of the country. That could be one option.
Yep.
Two, you look at it and say, maybe if they do have the best interest at mind and at heart on behalf of the people, okay, maybe this deal improves the quality of life of the country's citizens by 20% over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Who knows? But the reality is, as I think we can agree the world does not function on shoulds, coulds, and what's right. It seems to be the law of the jungle. You have the ability and the power to convince somebody to take a bad deal, you do it. If you have the power to employ martial and military power of someone to bend them to your will, that is the history of life on this earth, unfortunately.
No, yeah, you make great point. Those are all excellent points, actually, and that's where we are. And I would say something which is going to sound strange. I think as we think about history in its totality, and some people say this is the worst time in history. No, it's far from being the worst, probably the best time in history for humankind in a lot of respects, even though we have wars in Ukraine and war in Sudan, what's happening here. But what I find interesting about this time in history is how we're making alternative facts seem like truth, right? How one person running the most powerful country on earth can just lie continuously and can convince people about his lies, which I find amazing. So it cuts across what we have all learned, which is we all learned that truth is a must, it's an imperative, and it's something we all should do. And then somebody come and just lie, and the person is in a position of power and a respected seat, and yet does exemplify the behavior of someone who should be in that role.
Just as the truth can be used as a tool, a lie is used as a tool. So this goes back to and I'll leave on this. This is the question I asked you earlier. Would you rather the Trump administration just come out and say, look, we need to try to see if we can stop the black and brown people from entering the country, and can we improve our demographic numbers amongst white Americans?
So let me just say this.
Let's say hypothetically, that's
no. So let me answer your question. You know what's weird about that? He does that for everything else.
He does, but he's using a lie now.
But I'm saying, why do it? What's the deterrent why you're doing that now? Because you do it everywhere. You tell people, look, Iran, I'm gonna bomb the hell out of you. Venezuela, I'm just getting rid of Maduro. I want oil. You do that for everything else. So why are you being coy in this case?
Because that would not go well.
Exactly.
Well with the American public. That's why he's using this false pretext. Oh, we've got to get the people who are coming here and taking social services.
Yep.
No. But you have to sell this to the American public. Why? Because midterm elections, right?
Yep.
They're fighting to see if they can stave off these Democrats. So they're very savvy. They're very savvy. They know they're using everything to their disclosure. They'll use the truth when it benefits. They'll use a lie when it benefits.
Yep.
And I just try to approach things. I guess that's would be my wrapping point. I just try to look at the world. I've found myself in the last, especially post-COVID, increasingly not looking at the world through a lens of an idealist, or what should or could or what's right or wrong, and observe the world as it is and study history to understand what it was, for a picture of what the world may potentially continue to be. And it doesn't leave me fatalistic or hopeless, but it helps me understand how to navigate the world when I understand how the game has been played.
So I'll make what I consider to be an interesting comment, which is Trump is supposed to be here for another 3 years. So maybe we'll survive Trump. I'm not sure we're going to survive AI. So
that's a beast we have not seen.
No.
And that's going to fundamentally shift the world.
So wait, before you go, what's your, you can do it short if you want. What's your view on AI? I'm always curious to get people's perspective. What's your view on AI?
I think initially it's been overinflated. The narrative about AI, I would say, has been overinflated from a let's capitalize on the stock market aspect. So a lot of companies, we're an AI company, AI is the future, and you get a bunch of donor dollars. I think the narrative has been pushed, and I don't think it is going to be as immediately impactful. When I say immediately, I don't think we're going to see this doomsday scenario or this widespread disruption in entry-level jobs as quickly as the worst case scenario analysts give us, right? Like, in the next 5 years, 40% of entry-level jobs and the service sector will be wiped. I don't think it's going to take place that quickly. I do, however, my concern or my thoughts about it is really the safeguards. And I think I'm concerned. I want to read more. I want to learn more about what are the thought leaders saying in terms of safeguards, because you see everything from the deep fakes. You can put people in videos, you can change faces, you can mimic voices. I mean, this has from a legal standpoint, from a national security standpoint, from cyber security standpoint, there are a ton of implications that I'm really concerned about in that area. Privacy, false allegations. That's where my mind is. And how do we distinguish? How do we put some type of modifier in place? How do we put safeguards, security checks in place where this thing does not totally go rampant in the cyberspace, let alone impacting people in their very real physical worlds as well, with real world consequences. So I think there seems to be still like not enough infrastructure. There needs to be a lot more data centers, and there's a lot of conflict around that. There's a lot of people who have to get upskilled and trained in this. And with looking at it from a US perspective and how much we put restrictions on certain H-1B visas to come in, who, folks who may have certain skill levels, I think it's going to slow down maybe the US's advancements in AI compared to China per se. So those are just my general thoughts about it as of now.
No, I appreciate the insight and I appreciate the time. Very good call. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Love the show. We'll continue to listen.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, that's a very good call. You guys know my view on AI. I know the caller says, and it's a rational way of thinking. I heard Schmidt, who was the head of Google, saying this also. There are two sets of people on AI. I don't think there's anybody in the middle. There's one set like Schmidt who believe people can be retrained and AI is going to provide much of the benefit, and the concern can be managed by the government, as the caller just said, as it relates to some of the things that it can do, which may be very detrimental to society. There's another set that you listen to who are also the people who originate this whole construct of AI to say it has human, I'm going to call it, it's existential threat. It has human elimination implications. I'm going to use that term. That's not the best term to use, which I find interesting. My view is if I take some samples of evidence. So I said this before, I was at a retirement party with some people from my old workplace. One of my staff who used to work for me, she's retiring, right? Even though she's very young, so people have done well. But they were telling me about some reports we used to write. And the reports used to take days to get done. I get a report, I tear it apart, I review it, give it back to them. They come back to me back and forth for 3 days. Now those reports, they push a button and it's printed. So the speed is exponential and the quality is better. Just think about that. So you can get something done in a few minutes that would take days, but it's better than when it was previously, how it was done. That's concerning. Here's what's more concerning. The jobs, so people say you should upskill for AI, but the level of intellectual capital required for upskill is not your normal everyday person with certain intellect, right? Intellect is on a scale. Not everybody has intellect to upskill the way they should. Now, the one country that's been doing this really well, apparently, and has embraced AI is Singapore. Singapore always seems to be the front runner of some of these things because they focus on STEM. But even there, I don't think they totally get what the total implication is going to be. Just think about all different disciplines, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer. Think about the transportation industry, which has what? In the US, I think about 3 million people employed there. And all these automated vehicles coming out, and they're here now, and they're getting better. And the learning is going to be exponential because all we do is take all we have learned through history and pour into these computers. And we're creating all these data centers, all this electricity that runs cities. So just think about that. I see Lucid, when I do a show on Lucid the other day, is now working with Uber to create these autonomous driving cars. So you're going to get rid of Uber drivers. You know how much people drive Uber to make money on the side or make money as a living, for a living? You know how much truck drivers going to be eliminated. So and these things don't sleep. So it's not like a driver. People say, well, we're going to create more accidents. It's going to create less accidents. They're going to make decisions unless the system has some flaw in it. The system will make decisions based on how it's programmed. They got to make sure the program is right. And I always tell people this: programming sometimes can be very challenging, because if you have a program that's programmed wrong, and an element is to it, which under certain circumstances, they call this black swan event, occurs and is significant. And I've seen it happen in my career, especially in finance. That's a problem. So you'd have to have your test cases to be so robust, and even the best test case can go astray. But having said that, it's material in its implication for society. Because what's going to do is, unlike when we move from the agrarian society to the industrial, to technology, to now, it's eliminating a whole class of work that was put together, which is the white collar work. And what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Those white, especially it started. You know, I was in a store the other day, and you could see it was BJ's, one of those stores, but you could see they have like traditional, the old 10 lines of where cashiers work. Then they have all these automated machines on the side. So say you have 10 cashiers and you have 50 automated machines. And it was interesting where there maybe have been 4 actual physical human beings working, and you have 2 people at the machines. And the machine thing was much quicker because you're making your individual decisions. You're not going to some person going back and forth. But what's interesting about that is, I'm like, so we eliminated about 6 jobs because we had 2 people providing oversight. We have 2 people working, and it was 10 people normally work. That's 6 jobs that's gone. So we'll have people doing overseeing work. That's why people talk about entry-level jobs being eliminated, because a lot of entry-level jobs are just recurring work, monotonous stuff. And it's going to get taken over first, and then the more complex work. Because I believe, and I used to say this in my old life, everything can be programmed. You just need time, resources, and effort to do so. Even bespoke stuff, the more tailored stuff, the more one-off things can be programmed if you want to do it. And so if we're programming all these systems, and what's really interesting is the discussion about the system is learning from the system. So the system is going to be support for the system, and the system is learning independently and making independent decisions. That's why people are concerned about, well, the system can blackmail you, or the system may learn something it doesn't tell you. Or how do you test what the system learned? When I was in finance, the one thing we talk about is they used to build these complex systems they call black box. So you can't audit them because you know what the hell are in them, and they can be making decisions that wasn't the objective in the first place. So it's really interesting how that works. Let me take some comments here quickly. He says, honestly, I think the house has bolted from the stable already, and people are now trying to figure out how to lock the gate. Yeah, I think governments have been very negligent, and now they're struggling. Even though I hear, like, for example, people talk about in China, they have more safeguards around certain bad things that AI can do. But even those things, the AI is learning on its own, it's going to learn how to circumvent them safeguards. And I heard Musk the other day say he's going to build a system not to do certain things. And I'm like, maybe the system is going to hide what it has done, so you don't know. Lisa said, even those responsible for building the World Wide Web, I mean, they didn't foresee where the WWW and the internet would go. They never foresaw how deeply commercial it would become. Yeah, and I think that's part of the concern with AI, which is we can't see the ultimate outcome. These said, I doubt anyone knows where AI has been sent. Yeah, I do think AI is a concern for a lot of people. And the prognostications are normally within now to the next 5 years, there can be a material change in society and not for the good. And here's another thing which is going to be interesting, people. Normally in any society, the productivity is based on human physical contribution or mental contribution. Now we're going to have productivity in society whereby it's a system doing it and human beings are not contributing to this. So your economy could be flourishing, your productivity and efficiency could go up, but you have huge unemployment, which is a contradiction the way we know how societies work in general, which I find extremely interesting. And my philosophy is, and my perspective is, and I've said this before when I did a couple of AI shows, which is this, that as we go through this process with AI, the people who control the AI, the NVIDIAs of the world, the Teslas of the world, all those companies, big technology companies, the Oracles of the world. What they don't realize is that if the daily man on the street or the middle class don't have gainful employment and generate currency and generate funds for economic activity, and it dries up for them and the less than 1% of the one generated, at some point that also dries up. Because even though you're being efficient, nobody can buy your products. Nobody to buy from you, nobody to sell to. So that becomes a problem. Some people don't seem to realize how interconnected economies are and how they work. And no one segment, no one set of people can dominate because they all need each other. So you can act and think that, you know what, I'm NVIDIA, I'm valued $4 trillion, I can do what the hell I want to do. And yeah, it's all good for a while until you start displacing people. The same people will generate economic activity for your clients so you can get their resources. It doesn't work that way. And this whole thing about universal income, and I'm going to give you hey, if I know Americans, that stuff's not working. That's not working. We are in the legend movie, Vinny. This is legend movie time. People don't realize that. What you find out, people, is that society have these concepts which get tested out in movies. Just go back to like the cell phone and all those things way back when. The only thing that it doesn't do is like Star Trek, where they can beam you up because of the physical human beings. But anything that's been communicated electronically otherwise, those things have come out years before they became actuality. So in essence, a lot of things you see in movies is just out of the test case or the theory being actualized. So you can then look at it and say, oh, is that possible? And then you see it down the road, you're like, damn, self-driving cars, self-driving trucks, cell phones, all probably came out in movies first before they come actually on the street. Right? And I think what people don't realize, as something you say here, is that everything is interconnected. You can't do one without the other. Human beings can't survive in isolation. It's all linked. And for any economy to work, because think about what economy entails, people. People don't realize this. Two things before I go. One is, an economy is just how I transfer labor from one person to the next. And we do it in the form of money, do it in the form of currency. So you're a contractor, you're a plumber, I'm in finance, I need your plumbing, and you're contracting, you need what I do. And we use currency as a way to transmit that value. But if I don't work and the plumber doesn't work, how's the contractor going to get anything? So everything is just dead where it is. And not only work because they don't work because they have no jobs. So then who's going to pay rent? Who's going to pay light? Who's going to pay property taxes? We have built society a certain way. And the job is an imperative. The job is not a nice to have. The job is not something where, oh, you know what? It's leisure. No. The job is embedded in how we live as a society. If you don't have a job, what the hell are you going to do? You can't sit on the beach all day. How are you going to be incentivized? We talk about communism failing. How are you going to be incentivized to work? Lisa said, I read a biography about the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, Clockwork Exchange, Eyes Wide Shut, and he wrote a draft of the screenplay called Artificial Intelligence in the 60s. Yeah. Whatever human being can consider most things can become a reality. AI is not helping me my taxes, Cranky. What do I do? Must win again. Must win. Maybe you're not doing something right with your taxes. Wink, wink. Maybe you're not doing something right with your taxes. AI can help anybody with their taxes. Frankly, I was on AI the other day. She didn't talk this, I would say it anyway. Talking to AI about how to do a 1031 exchange and the calculation. And AI was brilliant. I only had to make some corrections to it. But AI was so quick, I didn't struggle. In fact, AI can do your taxes for you in no time. I'm positive. You just got to make sure you understand what it's doing, because most times AI make mistakes. I'm not going to say sometimes. A lot of times AI make mistakes. You just got to understand what you're doing so you can challenge it, and help it go down the right direction. But in terms of speed and effectiveness, accuracy may not be the best, but speed and effectiveness, it has it. There's no barter system because you don't have no job. You got no barter system. You don't have no job. The robot's going to fix the toilet, and the writing is done by some AI, and the surgery is done by the robot. Frankly, given all my eyes being messed up by the surgeon, I think the robot would do a better job than the surgeon. But the robot would do a better job with my eyes, diagnosing my eyes and doing my surgeon mess up my eye. The robot would do a much better job. And the robot is as good as it's been programmed. Every human being is a little bit different and will do something a little bit bespoke and different than what it's supposed to be. Robot going to do the same thing 100 times if it's been programmed right. So what you have to do is make sure you get programmed right and test it and do regression testing. By the end of the day, it's going to do what it's been told to do. Odell, where you come from, Odell? You must be not partying. So what's your solution? Have a world control on AI and limit it? What happens when China and some countries don't comply? Just a nuclear agreement. How will agree? Well, that's the conundrum facing society. There's a race to the bottom, I view it. They're all racing to be ahead. Racing without caution is not a good thing. Just racing for race sake. What are you racing to do? Annihilate yourself? What are you racing to do? What's this race about? And here's what's funny about this race, people. The group that's going to be least affected, it's going to seem like a contradiction. It's not even an oxymoron, it's a contradiction. The most affected and least affected group are those countries who are way behind the race, like the developing world. Because they'll still do their normal everyday jobs, but they won't be as efficient. They won't generate as enough resources. But the ones who are much faster is going to displace their workers, and they'll have more resources, but they ain't got nobody to buy it. Crazy. So this is Microsoft Copilot is awful. I don't use Copilot at all, actually. I use Chat. I use Gemini 3. I pay for both of those. And then I use Perplexity. Because Perplexity to me is the most accurate of all of them. Gemini 3 has gotten better. And I like Chat because I'm very much familiar with Chat. And Chat is getting better, by the way. I think the new Chat that came out the other day is much more improved, especially generating images, actually. Much improved. The farmer pays for the food, but how does the farmer value his food? So that's another thing about valuation, people. That's why I never understand Bitcoins and cryptocurrency and all of that, because to me, any currency has to be backed by some kind of central bank or backed by some collateral. Never understood that. Still don't understand it. I read. I know about blockchain. I read about all these things, and I walk away saying, it making no sense to me. And that's why you have so much volatility. I know they have things like stablecoin now, which are much as volatile, but stablecoin is backed by collateral. But anyway, we won't get into that discussion tonight, but the old monetary system is not going away anytime soon. So any last questions are coming before I leave, people? I think I've been here 2.5 hours. I came on at 8 o'clock. It's 10:38. It's been a long show. But I appreciate everyone who have been here. Before you leave, please hit the like button if you haven't done so. Please subscribe. I want to do more of these programs. I seem to think that people love the football and talk the football, but when it comes to anything else, when it comes to real life, they don't want to have the conversation. And I like doing some of these. To be honest, I sometimes prefer to do the live show because they take less time to prepare, which may sound strange. Oh, not less time to prepare. They take less time to put together. When I do a video, because I want a video to really come across really well, I spend so much time putting together photos and videos to support it. The talk over is really simple and really quick. But my tool effectiveness and efficiency is challenged in terms of using iMovie. I don't even use the other one, Microsoft. No, sorry, but that Apple produces. It just takes me too long. So I prefer to do the live because the preparation time is the same, but the execution time is different in terms of it. But the show takes much longer. So the video may take 15 minutes, but take me 2 days to get done. The live may take me a day in terms of preparation, and then just talking to you is much easier. So Oda says, so where you think Jamaica will be in the world? Oh, yeah, well, we'll go back. If USA gets bad, I will. I think Jamaica is challenged, actually. I think Jamaica has to be very careful that it doesn't continue to rely upon the U.S. or its existence, literal existence. I think Jamaica has to diversify its economy, reduce its dependency on tourism and remittances, and try to think about what industries it could leverage. I also think Jamaica needs to leverage the diaspora in terms of intellectual capital, come up with thoughtful ways about how people who migrate can contribute to the society, not just monetarily or financially, but more in terms of thought, innovation, business to help. Because I don't think what we do now is optimum and working as it should. In fact, I think some of it does take away from the country versus adding to it. Even though financially, I think Jamaicans who migrate contribute significantly to the country. I do think there are other things that are not being explored and even exploited that they should. But in terms of AI, I think Jamaica is going to be challenged like everybody else. The major countries running when it comes to this AI is the US, China, and I'm sure there are other countries that we don't know too much about, some other countries and their AI programs. We hear about China and the US a lot. We don't even hear about Western Europe that much. But I do think that as we go forward, more and more countries are going to realize that they have a conundrum. They're behind the 8 ball when it comes to AI, but the AI implication of your society is challenging. Think about this before I go. Think about Germany, for example, that has been the best performing economy in Europe for years. And the stress and their car industry is so huge and so mature to the economy that it permeates their society. But now, given what's happening with the competition from China and everybody getting in the US with Tesla and all of that, German cars are not in favor like they used to be. So what are they going to do? Because I don't think they have contingency plan. They have other industries to be able to replace their car industry, which may get replaced by competition. China is making ridiculous cars for cheaper prices. Now, tariffs and export duties may affect those prices of those cars, but even then, they're competitive with everybody else. He says, speaking of wonderful technology, my browser just crashed, but I reloaded and it came right back. The progress, I guess. Yep, that is progress, D. Jamaica needs good government. Jamaica needs a lot, people. A lot. Muslim said, Cranky, these programs are excellent. Keep it up. After tax season, I'm challenging you to a income tax debate. Must win. You get yourself in trouble with a must win. They keep telling you this is a must win. We don't want taxes must win. The fun thing about taxes is this, people, that Trump and his people, they do a lot to make sure that tax policies and the tax rules are in their favor. Right? But you know what? I want to talk about must win. I want to talk about like real estate investing. That's a discussion people should have. I was looking at something the other day. I went to look at a property, right? And an agent took me, I called the agent, drew Zillow, look at a property because I'm trying to do a transaction. And she said, and I'm not a big real estate investor, but I dabble, right? And she said, the property is valued at a certain price. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. I don't care what price you want to give. The price of the property, you're going to need at least, based on the cost, about 30% of the cost to refurbish this property. It's a property built in 1970, and they have done nothing to the property, zero. And they want to do a price that's reflective of property that's moving condition. I say that won't work. And I say, first of all, you want a cap rate of 70%. And she said, what's a cap rate? And I walked away saying, wow, if you're doing a job, it's a discipline and something fundamental to your industry, you don't know what a cap rate is for a real estate property, then I'm not sure you understand what you're doing. Seriously. If you don't know what cap rate is for a real estate property and you're a real estate agent, that's not a good look. That can't be a good look. So I was very concerned to say, you can't be the best real estate agent. She was a nice lady, but I was like, you haven't done your homework. That's not good. And I tell my family and my niece and nephew here with me, which is, and they don't do it as much because everybody's on social media. You got to educate yourself as much as possible. You never want to be in an environment where you feel out of place. You don't want to be in an environment where you're involved in something and you haven't made best effort to be informed to allow you to maximize whatever it is you want to maximize in that given situation. It's just not a good look. Cranky is Germany. My Cranky is Germany or Lex? What do you mean? Luxembourg is a place where a lot of people go do stuff because they're very tax friendly and it's an interesting place. It's like a full employment location. I used to have a company who had business there. I wasn't going there. I didn't go there actually, but we had a shop there. It's a really interesting place. Very expensive is my understanding. A lot of fun companies and different companies have operations there. Their companies are going to get affected materially if things AI become material, frankly. DJ says, Cranky, do you think the government is actually for the people? Which government? The US government, the Jamaican government, US government? Most governments, the people in the seats, a lot of them go into power for the right reason and end up being there for the wrong reason. To go into power because they're socially, they're very focused on people and how things are done, and they want to help. And then they go in and they get frustrated because the bureaucracy is so much, and they get co-opted, and they just go in there for that. And they realize that, you know what, for my survival, I got to be for me. And it's less about the people. I got to follow what's done in this area. I got to follow what the majority do and what the organization do and what the party does, and they're not thinking about the people. So even the Republican Party, I mean, they only do what Trump wants. Some of them are they're not supportive of Trump. In fact, a lot of them, think about before 2016, go read some of the history of what Vance said about Trump. What's his name from South Carolina? That's what they said about Trump. Go read what they said about Trump. It's awful. And yet they're best buddies because it's about their own personal survival. They don't give a damn about their own thoughts and their own principles and how they operate. But it's a Cranky. When you're going to talk about New York, how all the hedge fund and big companies leaving to cheaper states like Florida, that's going to affect New York economy. New York is always going to survive, and people are innovative here and replace. I think New York is a very unique city. Very unique city. Very strategically located, very diverse city, very, very segregated diversity. It's really weird. You have these different neighborhoods, whether it's the Italians or the West Indians, and even the West Indians are bifurcated, and then you have the Jewish. They're all over, but even Brooklyn, where I live, they're all very segregated, but it's a very diverse city. And Manhattan depends on where you're in Manhattan, sort of middle of Manhattan is sort of Caucasian driven. But yeah, a lot of hedge funds, it's about taxes. They move out, but they still keep operations in New York because there's nothing like New York. You go to Miami, you can't get around because of traffic. You're in Manhattan, you get a taxi, you can jump on a tube, or you don't take the tube, take a taxi, go in the 40s or 50s or 30s, and best restaurants and Broadway and all that. You ain't get that in South Florida. We got to go drive everywhere. You're on 95, you can't move. It's a different ball game. Yeah, it's good to have more money in your pocket, but there's nothing like New York. So yeah, New York will go through a challenging period, just like California. The blue states are going to go through some interesting times and challenges because the people with real money want to pay taxes. But if they have business in New York, they got to pay New York taxes anyway, right? If you have business in New York, unless they move their total operations to Florida. And also, a lot of times what people don't consider is people like to meet people, right? Now, if they all go to the same place, that's a different story, but they like to meet people. And now information is ubiquitous nowadays. Information is transferable. So you don't need to be in physical place a lot of time, but some people just like to engage and meet and be in the same environment. So we'll see what happens. But I think New York will be okay. It's based on people in the seats and government. Like I said before, I think people go into governments, a lot of them for the right reason, and end up being there for the wrong reason. Because it's very bureaucratic, it's very hierarchical. And I've never really followed politics, but as I said, I had a friend of mine who got elected to a position, and they walked me through the process. I walked away very disappointed. In fact, almost distraught, to be honest. It's not good. It's not good. We think we vote And the first time I realized that is, I was working on a job a long time ago, and someone from the Javits Center, one of the people who owned the Javits Center, was in a conversation on a board meeting, and he was talking about, I think it was Bush was in charge at the time. He was talking about, oh, we got to appoint this person to do X, Y, Z, almost as if the voters didn't exist. I swear, the way he was talking, because these people are multimillionaires and hundreds of millions or billionaires, it's like we didn't exist. We just vote because we think we're voting for a given candidate, but we really didn't matter. It was mainly about who got appointed for a role, and they will get them elected because the voters didn't matter. I walked away thinking my vote didn't count. I'm gonna be honest, even though I do vote, I just walked away. When I thought through what he was saying and assessed it, I was like, damn, we're that insignificant in society? Crazy. Anyway, let me say good night. Let me say, first of all, for those of you who stay with me throughout this long, almost 3-hour show. I didn't expect to be here for 3 hours. I thought it would be an hour. I appreciate you. We digress from the main topic conversation and go back to it, which is the gist of the conversation was the new policy, which restrict the ability of individuals to come here from 75 countries on a permanent basis, which I think is unfair. And I think it's all about one thing. It's not about the benefits that they said being abused and people can't sustain themselves when they come here. It's a strategic view, and this is one component of it, about race. It's about Black and brown people being disenfranchised by those in power. That's part of their objective. If you look at the composition of the executive branch in government in the US, it gives you an insight into what the perspective and perception is and how they want to operate. And this is just one example of a number of different things that they have done related to immigration and people and citizenship and permanent residence, which tell you it's an orchestrated, it's a strategy that's been orchestrated to reduce the number of Black and brown people in this country and find a way to increase the number of Caucasians. The increase is not going to occur because you can't just manufacture Caucasians, people not having more kids, but they can strategically reduce the number of Black and brown people, disenfranchise them to maintain that differential. And if we can't see that, then we need to wear glasses. Don't go to your surgeon like I did because it may not work. But I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back next week. I'm supposed to have a show with Dr. Don, actually, to talk about some diseases that affect our community, especially around diabetes and high blood pressure. So I'm hoping to have it with him next week. I think he's been busy. I'm going to reach out to him and have that discussion. I was hoping to have a football person on, but they haven't finalized the timeline for me to talk with them. And then I want to talk about next week about the Jamaican dollar and its devalue and my view of what Jamaica should be doing in some of these sort of industry type things. So that's some of my perspective. And if you have topics you want me to discuss, let's see, or they want me to talk about the migration south of hedge funds, who I don't know what value they add nowadays anyway, of hedge funds, billionaire hedge funds from New York. They always had multiple properties, but now they seem to be taking their business away from New York so they can pay less tax and go down south. They don't realize that down south is not what it used to be, especially not down south, but Florida, given climate change and given some of the challenges that they face. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here. And I will see you when I see you. Peace out. Good night.